Thank you for tuning in. It is currently 1:56 a.m. Today's date is the 9th of October 2024. Your boy Genesis is back. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. All right. You know what time it is. But tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. I am back. All right. I hope my hotspot is. I don't like this flies, bro. I hope my hotspot is connecting because I'm currently using my other phone's Wi-Fi right now. I hope it's connecting, but if it's not, I would have to like reconnect the other phone. However, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you. How has your day been? And for some of you who are sleeping right now, well, I hope you have a wonderful night rest. All right, without further delay, let's dive into it. Let's dive deep into the stream. Okay, the title of today's stream is The Countdown Begins because November 5th is 27 days from now. Are you ready? Are you guys ready for November? Are you ready? Are you guys? All right. I think we're back. I think we're back. I think we are back from that. Dang, this internet is just so slow, bro. The internet is so slow, my lord. Hurricane Helen got me all worked up. No internet, no good internet. Everything is just slow, bro. Slow. But I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for being here. You guys are the best. All right, let's just delve into it. Let's go into it. Let's go into it. Of course, JD Vance. JD Vance had a rally, and we're gonna listen to JD Vance right now. Okay. All right, let's get it.
In the Motor City. It's great to be in the state of Michigan, and I believe that it is in just 28 days we're going to turn the state of Michigan red, take back this country, and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Now, we are in one of the great capitals of American craftsmanship and American manufacturing. That's one of the things I love about the city of Detroit. That's one of the things I love about this community is for a generation, for many generations, the people in the state of Michigan, the people in the city of Detroit made great American products. They were proud of it, and they had every single right to be. And I've already met some auto workers here today. I'm sure there are many auto workers in the audience with us right now. We're proud of you. We're grateful for you. And I promise you that when Donald Trump is back in the White House, auto workers in the city of Detroit are going to have an ally once again. Not somebody who's trying to destroy their jobs like Kamala Harris, but is going to fight for their jobs every single day. Now I want to give a couple shout outs here. I know we've got the great Congresswoman Lisa McClain. Lisa, thank you for being here. There we are, Lisa, thank you. You guys have got a great Michigan GOP chair, Pete Hoekstra. Where's Pete? Thank you, Pete. I think it was Pete who said hello to me and said, I'm a little disappointed you've only been to Michigan 2 times this week, not 3 times this week, Pete. We do what we can. And of course, the person I'm most thrilled to have here, no offense to anybody else, but is my lovely wife, Usha. It's a great honor and a lot of fun to be able to go around and campaign for vice president with the most beautiful person in the world by your side. Honey, I love you. Thank you for doing this. And I want to talk, because we are in a great capital of American craftsmanship, I want to talk about the fact that unfortunately we have got a leadership in this country that is trying to destroy the auto industry instead of build it. And let's just be honest about that. Under Kamala Harris, the American auto industry is suffering more than it has in at least 20 years. And I want to read off just a couple of statistics, especially for those folks who are watching at home. Here in Michigan, Stellantis announced it would permanently lay off 2,500, the Michigan auto workers, the folks who make the Ram 1500 Classic, a great American automobile. Unfortunately, those Michigan auto workers lost their jobs. Last year, GM let go 1,300 workers at 2 Michigan plants. And we know that a lot of these companies are shipping manufacturing to Mexico and to China. Let's get back to the leadership of Donald Trump and make things in America and only in America. Now, Ford, we see headlines consistently, is rolling back a lot of its EV production. And we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's electric vehicle mandate, 117,000 American auto jobs, a lot of them right here in Michigan, are under threat. Well, here's something different we're going to do when Donald J. Trump is president. Instead of forcing Americans to buy electric vehicles manufactured in China, we're going to let Americans buy whatever the hell they want to, because this is America. We believe in freedom, and we believe in letting people choose their own automobile. And of course, my friends, when they do pick the automobile that they want and that they choose, we know they're going to buy something made in the great state of Michigan. They're going to buy American, because that's what so many Americans want, the best products. Now, I don't know if y'all saw this, but I guess this morning, Kamala Harris had an interview with The View. Wait a second. I am shocked that we don't have a whole lot of The View watchers here in the Motor City. Sir, you don't watch Kamala Harris on The View? No? Well, I do the job sometimes that you folks don't want to. I actually watched Kamala Harris's interview on The View. Now, I got to tell you, to go into The View as a Democrat politician, that's like the easiest interview in the entire world, right? I mean, if I walked into The View, that'd be like walking into this room with an Ohio State jersey, right? That's something you just don't do. But she walks into The View, and you would think that would be an interview, and you know what they asked her? They gave her a softball, an easy question, really propaganda. They said, can you name a single thing where you disagree with Joe Biden? Now, let's back up for a second, because remember, Kamala Harris's entire campaign is to pretend that she hasn't been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. You know, she stands up before crowds and she'll say, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis. On day one, we're going to secure the border. And you listen to her for 5 minutes and you think, Kamala, are you going to vote for Donald Trump because do things differently than Joe Biden, where she increased the cost of groceries by 25%. The average Michigan family is paying $1,000 more per month, that's $12,000 per year, to afford today what they could have afforded when Donald Trump was president. The border is wide open thanks to our illustrious border czar, Kamala Harris, and her entire campaign has been to pretend that she doesn't bear any responsibility for the policies, even though she's the sitting vice president. And here's the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. There are so many of them, but the big difference is that Donald Trump has a record to be proud of, and Kamala Harris has a record to be ashamed of. You know, because when President Trump stands before a crowd, he doesn't try to pretend that he wasn't president, but she tries to pretend she wasn't the vice president. He doesn't pretend that he didn't have any decision-making authority over his own administration, because of course he did, but Kamala Harris runs from her own administration. And you know why Donald Trump isn't afraid to talk about his record? Well, number one, because he's actually honest with the American people, but most importantly, it's a record to be damn proud of. Low inflation, rising take-home pay, and a secure southern border. So for anybody watching at home, just ask yourself the very basic question. Kamala Harris has been in charge for 4 years. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I think any honest person would say the answer is no. And you know who is certainly not better off than they were 4 years ago? Michigan auto workers. I mean, we just walked through thousands of job losses just in the state of Michigan because Kamala Harris would rather tax American citizens and force you to buy electric vehicles made in China. You know what Donald Trump wants to do? He wants to reward Michigan auto workers. He wants to give working people in this country a tax cut, and he wants to let Americans buy the cars that Americans want to buy. And we know when they do, they're going to buy a lot of Michigan-made automobiles. So let's just talk a little bit. We talked about manufacturing, we talked about automobiles. Let's talk about inflation. Because, you know, the media, they'll tell you, and this is one area where Kamala Harris, she can't quite figure out what she thinks. Because whenever they stick a microphone in front of her face, and that's rare, right? Kamala Harris very rarely does interviews, especially with hostile media. What she'll say, she'll actually brag about the fact that inflation is lower than it was when she took over. Now, that's a bald-faced lie, and I'd ask anybody, think about the fact that Kamala Harris, anybody watching, think about the fact that Kamala Harris is bragging about inflation being lower. When you go to the grocery, does inflation feel like it's lower? No. Are American houses actually affordable for American citizens? No. Everywhere you look, prices are higher, things are more expensive, and American citizens can't afford the basic necessities. Look, I grew up in a family where my mamaw sometimes struggled to buy the things that she needed. Sometimes she wouldn't buy prescription drugs so that she could afford to put food on our family table. I know what it's like when Washington leaders fail to do their job. And so Kamala Harris, instead of running a victory lap over your own policy failures, why don't you get out there and talk to the American people and tell them how you're actually going to fix this terrible inflation problem caused by your policies. You know, gas prices are up 45% under Kamala Harris. That's just in Michigan. In Michigan, home prices are up 41%. I know we have a lot of parents and a lot of grandparents in this room. Speaking as the father of 3 young children, I would like my kids, when they grow up and move out, and hopefully that eventually happens, but when they grow up and they move out, I want them to be able to afford home ownership in the United States of America. That's a core part of the American dream, right? And we know a lot of our young people right now cannot afford to own a home in the United States of America. Kamala Harris has failed to deliver the basic necessities of an economic prosperity for our citizens, and I think that we ought to say something very simple to Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump's very fond of saying it. You're fired. Go back to San Francisco where you belong. We're getting a president the American people deserve. I really worry, by the way. You know, we don't talk about this enough. I see we've got a lot of young people in this crowd. It's great. We've got some great generational diversity in this crowd, and I love that. I love that about our events. But to young people, I want you to be able to own a slice of your own country. I want you to be able to build something, to build some wealth for yourself and for your family. You know, under Kamala Harris's policies, we've got credit card debt that is through the roof. We've got young people who can't afford to buy a home. We're creating a country where my generation, the millennial generation, and everybody younger, they're going to be paupers in their own country. And I think that's a disgrace. I want the American dream to be affordable again, and it's only going to happen when we put Donald J. Trump back in the White House. My friends, I did not realize this. We are joined by a real celebrity, Brick Suit Man, right here in the second row. And a way bigger celebrity than I am, this guy. But you know to talk about housing, and the media, they don't like to talk about the fact that one of the biggest drivers of housing costs, one of the biggest reasons why our young people can't afford to buy a home, is because under Kamala Harris's leadership, we have let in millions upon millions of people who don't have any right to be here. It's a big driver of housing costs. So illegal immigration, we care about for a whole host of reasons. We care about it because we want to raise our children in safe communities. We care about it because we want people in our country who respect the rule of law, who don't violate our borders. We, of course, care about it because I know a lot of us know somebody who's been affected by this terrible drug epidemic. We want to give people second chances to get sober and to get clean, and that's not happening when Mexican drug cartels are bringing fentanyl into our country, killing our people. So we care about the border for all the reasons that we discuss, and there's a lot of them, but something the media just doesn't talk enough about is, think about this. When you bring in, and I think the number is about 25 million illegal aliens that we have in the United States of America right at this minute. When you let 25 million people into this country, think about it. You got to house them somewhere. Most of them aren't living on the streets. We got American veterans living on the streets, but we've got illegal aliens living in first-class hotels in American cities all across our country. But when you do that, you have American homes that are going to people who have no right to be here in the first place. And you know what that means? That means American citizens can't afford to own a slice of their own country. President Trump believes in this very simple principle: American homes for American citizens, not for people who have no legal right to be in the United States of America. You know something else that happens when you let in too many illegal aliens? Hospital wait times get really big. You know, when I was growing up, that's often how we went to the doctor, is Mamaw would take us to the emergency room. And you know what? Emergency room wait times have skyrocketed in the last few years. So why are we allowing illegal aliens to come into our country and get health care that ought by right go to American citizens? Why don't we take care of our own people and put American citizens first for a change? It's got to stop. The final thing I want to talk about with the border, because, I mean, look, you could talk about the border for the next half hour. But the other thing that is crazy about the border is, in the state of Michigan, I didn't know this statistic until today, there are 85,000 students in Michigan public schools who are the children of illegal aliens. 85,000. Now think about that. Think about what it does to a poor school teacher who's just trying to get by with what they have, is trying to educate their kids, and then you drop in a few dozen kids into that school, many of whom don't even speak English. Do you think that's good for the education of the American citizens? No, it's not. So what really bothers me is when Kamala Harris talks about the southern border, she talks about how we need to be compassionate to illegal aliens. And I think we're a great country. We can be compassionate, and we ought to be compassionate, but our compassion has to start with our fellow citizens, the people who deserve to be in the United States to begin with. And this is what I think is fundamentally different about Donald Trump's immigration policies versus Kamala Harris's wide-open southern border, is Donald Trump believes, yes, we can be compassionate, but the best way to be compassionate is to enforce our border laws and take care of American citizens first. That is where the responsibility of America's leadership ought to be. So I want to talk about one other thing, and then we'll take some questions from the press. But, you know, we've got 28, or depending on how you count, 27 days left in this election. That is not a whole lot of time. And I know that in states all across our country, including in some of the battleground states, people are already voting. You know, people have already been sending me photos where they went out and voted for me and President Trump. That's obviously an incredible honor, by the way, to come from my family and to be sitting up here and asking all of you to make me your next Vice President of the United States. It's very humbling. It's an incredible honor. Now, y'all are way too kind. I appreciate it. But look, we're going to win this election. I really do believe we're going to win the state of Michigan. We're going to win this election. But we're going to win this election not just to beat the Democrats, as fun as that's going to be. I'm going to really enjoy beating Kamala Harris. But we want to beat Kamala Harris because we want the American people to have a government that they deserve, a government that puts them first, a government that takes care of the American people's problems and not the problems of illegal aliens and people who don't deserve to be here. So let's just think about the contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We talked about illegal immigration earlier. Well, Kamala Harris has rolled out the red carpet to illegal aliens, has said we're going to give Medicare and Social Security benefits. That's the message that she has sent to people who want to cross the border illegally and come to this country. You know what Donald Trump's message is to illegal aliens? You got 4 months, pack your bags, because you're going home when Donald Trump is back in the White House. Kamala Harris's entire economic policy is to tax American citizens and to force them to buy things they don't even want to buy that are made overseas. That's terrible for American workers. That's terrible for American taxpayers. Donald Trump's plan is to cut taxes on American citizens, cut taxes on American workers, and penalize corporations that are shipping our jobs overseas. That is an America First economic plan. Donald Trump's basic energy policy is drill, baby, drill, and it is a hell of an energy policy because look, we have got the most bountiful natural resources anywhere in the world. So why does Kamala Harris want to put American energy workers out of business and force us to buy energy from tin-pot dictators all over the world? Let's buy it from our own people, from our own territory, and that's how you build American prosperity. And that's actually, by the way, my friends, another big difference between Donald Trump's policies and Kamala Harris's policies. You know, when they asked Donald Trump, what is your most important thing you can do to lower inflation, he actually gives a very simple but a very specific answer: drill, baby, drill. Because energy goes in the cost of everything, right? Think about it. If the truck drivers are paying more for gas, then the groceries they deliver to the grocery store are going to get more expensive. If the truck drivers are paying more for diesel, then they deliver lumber to a job site to build a house. That means housing is going to get more expensive too. And of course, we know, ask any manufacturer, one of their biggest costs is the cost of energy. So you lower the cost of energy, you create good jobs, you create great prosperity, and you bring down the cost of goods for everyday American citizens. It is a win-win economic policy. It is the smartest and most important thing we can do. But Kamala Harris's economic policy, you heard her say it on The View today, it's to do exactly what Joe Biden did, and it's going to lead to the exact same place. Higher inflation, fewer Americans with good jobs, and a manufacturing sector that we're shipping to China instead of building right here in the great city of Detroit. That is a lose-lose economic plan, and I think we ought to have the win-win economic plan of Donald J. Trump. So before I take questions from reporters, I want to ask a very simple thing. Absentee voting has started in Michigan. That means that you can request and return a ballot right now. And we got to do everything. We got to take care of every opportunity to vote that the state of Michigan is providing. Because look, I talk to a lot of people. It's one of the things you do when you run for vice president. You talk to a lot of people, and you know, 95% of the people I meet will say, I wanted to vote for Donald Trump in 2020, and I did. But then a few of them will tell me, I wanted to vote for Donald Trump, but I didn't. Because I planned to vote on election day, but then my kid got sick and I had to go pick him up from school. Or I had a really late day at work and I didn't expect it. And so by the time I got out of work, working those overtime hours, the polls were already closed. I gotta be honest with you, I don't like the fact that we've gone from election day to election season in this country, but it is what it is. And if the Democrats are gonna take advantage of every avenue to vote, then Republicans, we've gotta do it too. So get out there, make your voice heard, and get out there and vote. There's a website I want you to take down. I'm gonna ask you to do two things here. Number one, take down this website, swampthevoteusa.com, swampthevoteusa.com. On that website, you can check your registration, you can check your polling location, you can make sure your registration is up to date. That is a very good resource for you to use. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to take out your phone and take a photo right now. You can take it of you and your friends at this event. You can take it of me up here on the podium. This is making the Secret Service very nervous, by the way, so please move slowly, my friends. But here's the thing. We're never going to have the power of the dishonest national media behind us, but we do have people power. We can talk about why we're voting for Donald Trump, and we can do it in our capacity as citizens of this country. So I'm sure you all have some social media, or maybe you just text, whatever you do, email, text, put it on x.com, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram. Just say why you're voting for Donald Trump for president. Because if every single person does that, and 100 people see what you put out there, then that means thousands upon thousands of people are going to hear the truth about Donald J. Trump and not the dishonesty from the media. That is the biggest and best thing that we can do. So, before we hit the road, we'll take some questions from reporters. I want to thank you all for being here. Thanks for having me. I'll leave you with some final thoughts, but it's such an honor to be here and to get this welcome in the Motor City. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Yeah. All righty. So let me take a few questions from reporters. I'll answer them, and then we'll have to hit the road. But we got a microphone. We're passing around over there. Yep. Go ahead.
Great. This is Clara Hendrickson. I'm with the Detroit Free Press. We're in the city of Detroit today, where we learned in a recent Jack Smith filing that the Trump campaign aide in 2020 allegedly urged supporters to riot at the ballot counting center. So I want to make sure that the senator can hear my question, which is, would you discourage the campaign from engaging in that behavior and from Trump supporters and engaging in a chaotic scene?
So let me answer that question a few different ways. So first of all, of course we discourage rioting. We do not riot. Nobody in this room and nobody in this movement is going to riot. Second of all, your question is about a Trump campaign staffer. And I'll tell you that if you get 1,000 people together, and the Trump campaign probably has a lot more than 1,000 campaign staffers, you're going to find somebody who's willing to say anything, especially in a leaked message or a private communication. The idea that the Trump campaign, either in 2020 or 2024, is encouraging people to riot is disgraceful. Of course we're not doing that. And by the way, these fine people are law-abiding citizens who work and pay their taxes. They're not going to riot no matter what anybody says to them. And here's the final point. I think it's interesting that the media is so focused on a random message from a random staffer in 2020. If you want to talk about rioting, let's talk about the summer riots of 2020 that killed 20 people that the media seems uninterested in. Next question.
Hello, my name is Sasha Calver. I'm a reporter with the Michigan Daily. So, the University of Michigan, all campuses, has historically had some of the largest student voter turnout in the U.S. Why should students in Michigan cast their vote for the Trump-Vance ticket? And additionally, how will your administration support students, specifically concerning gun violence, where you have rejected calls for tougher gun laws and bans on bump stocks? Essentially, why should students concerned about their safety on campus vote for you?
Yeah, so the first, let's be honest here. I don't know if a Ohio State graduate is the best messenger to University of Michigan students. So I hope. And in fact, thank you, sir. You know, maybe we should just get, we should get a clip of me saying something nice about Kamala Harris out to the University of Michigan, because then maybe they'd all vote for Donald J. Trump if you just told them I was a Buckeye. Like, I'm always a little nervous about injecting myself into the OSU-Michigan rivalry here, but I think that we all kidding aside, look, we all care about the country. And that's why I think every person in this room is going to help me make Donald J. Trump the next president of the United States. And it's in that spirit that I want to answer this question. If I'm a young person in Michigan, here's one thing that Donald Trump and I want to do. First of all, we want to make it easier for you to build a life and to have a good career and to have a good job in your home, not to ship all the good jobs overseas, but to build a great middle-class economy right here in the United States of America. I think that's something that matters to a lot of Michigan students. I think a second thing that matters to Michigan students is I don't want young people in this country to be permanently indebted because we built an economy that turns American citizens into paupers in their own country. I want them to be able to own a home, build some wealth for themselves, and start a family right here in the state of Michigan, and do it. And do it because we've got smarter economic policies that are going to allow them to thrive. Michigan students, people who are, meaning at the University of Michigan and all across the state, because I know there's a lot of great universities in the state of Michigan, we are turning an entire generation of American young people into folks who don't have enough money to own anything. That is a terribly destructive direction for this country to go in. Donald Trump and I want you to be able to own a slice of your own country, and we're going to pursue economic policies that make that possible. That's what we're going to fight for every single day. And on the question about gun violence, what I have said is that 90%, upwards of 90% of the gun crime that's committed in this country is committed using an illegally obtained firearm. So my point is, making it unlawful to own that gun has not stopped 90% of these gun crimes. So what we've got to do is take some common sense security measures. And I think the best way to reduce gun crime in the United States of America, I think this is a statistical fact, is to lock up people who are committing violence against their fellow citizens. That's the most important thing. And I'm going to butcher the statistics, so I don't want to give them exactly, but if you look, whether it's in Detroit or New York City, any of our major cities, and you look at the violence problem, it is always a very, very small number of people who commit the gross majority of violent crimes. So why don't we get back in this country, whether whatever your racial background is, whether you're rich or poor, get back to locking locking up that small number of violent criminals, it'll make everybody safer, everybody more secure, and it'll actually give people public safety. And I think that's the biggest way we can reduce violent crime in this country. Thank you. Next question.
Senator Vance, Ken Coleman from MichiganAdvance.com. Detroit is 77% African American. The state is 14% African American. Why should African American Michiganders vote for the Trump-Vance ticket?
Well, you know, we've got a great number of Black Americans in this crowd right now. They could probably answer that question better than I could, but. But without calling everybody up here, because I'm a politician, I don't like to share the microphone with anybody as much as I like them. What I think they would agree with is, number one, Donald Trump wants to bring back public safety and an economy that brings prosperity for everybody. Good wages for good jobs. That's the Trump promise, and I think that's a great promise to Black families in Michigan and to everybody else. Here's something else. I mean, there is this idea in the media, and I don't know where it came from, that somehow Black Americans don't believe in public safety in this country. Well, we know whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, Black Americans do care about public safety in this country. They want to empower our law enforcement officers to do their job. Of course, do it respectfully and make sure we've got good relationships between police and community, but we can have a good relationship between police and the communities they serve while we lock up the violent criminals and keep everybody safe in the process. I think that's very.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. If you're watching, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. The question here is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Possible. And look, I mean, the story of Black Americans, especially in the city of Detroit, is actually very similar to the story of Appalachian white Americans who came from West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. We moved to places like Detroit, Black and white together, because there were good jobs for people who were willing to work hard and play by the rules. And it wasn't always perfect, but for a generation in this country, people, Black and white, worked together, raised their families, built things in this country, and created prosperity for the entire country. And if you... That was the story, by the way, in the steel mill that my grandfather worked in for almost 40 years. You had Black folks and white folks living together, working together, and they again, it wasn't always perfect, but it worked. You know why it worked? Because we had good jobs for people who were willing to work hard and play by the rules. The destruction of the manufacturing economy in the state of Michigan has been disastrous for Black Americans, and it's been disastrous for a lot of middle-class white Americans too. We can make things in this country again. We can build things in the United States of America again, and when we do, it's going to bring prosperity to Black and white alike. Next question.
Is it on? Good afternoon, Senator Vance. My name is John Enot from Avante Moda Magazine, and I'm a member of the local independent media here in Detroit, so hopefully I'll get a little safer reception. I'm a native Detroiter, and I think Michiganders are really worried about a lot of things during this election cycle, and I think a couple that I hear all the time is they're very nervous about their First Amendment and their Second Amendment rights. So the question is, what will the Trump administration do to guarantee the people of Michigan that their rights will be protected And what's your view on those amendments? And then also, to what extent should social media companies, if any, be able to moderate and control what people say online if it's legal?
Yeah. So let me try to answer that question as completely as I can. Number one, I love the First and Second Amendments. There's a reason they're number one and number two is because they're the most important. But you go back to the question the gentleman asked earlier about black Americans and particularly what black Michiganders have to gain from a Trump presidency. And if you look at the censorship and the vaccine mandates, the idea that you should be fired from your job for speaking your mind, that fell oftentimes hardest on black Americans as much as anybody else, because it was often black Americans who were going on and saying, well, wait a second. Why, and again, this is everybody, but it was happening a lot in the black community. Why are we forced to take this shot in order to earn a living and provide bread for our children? Why are we being silenced by some of the biggest corporations in the United States of America? I think that affects everybody, but your question about technology companies, the biggest threat to the First Amendment in the United States of America is big technology companies who are trying to silence Americans for speaking their mind. And the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency, we've got no use for it. And you asked about the Second Amendment. Look, we believe in the Second Amendment. We believe that people ought to be able to keep their families and their children safe. And it's that simple. And I think there is a big difference between the Kamala Harris campaign. Kamala Harris has explicitly endorsed gun confiscation. Donald Trump has explicitly endorsed the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I'd rather be on that side.
Hi, this is Jordan Pear with MLive and the Ann Arbor News. You've talked a lot about EVs and that kind of stuff today. What would you say to voters who maybe agree with a lot of your policies but are concerned about climate change and environmental impact of the automotive industry?
So here's what I'd say, Sarah, and I appreciate the question. So first of all, the most important thing that we can do to ensure clean air and clean water is to build more and make more stuff in the United States of America. That is the biggest thing. Look, I would be lying to you if I told you that carbon emissions was my number one issue, okay? It's not. But if your number one issue is carbon emissions, look at the two countries that have emitted the most carbon in the last 20, 30 years. It's China and it's India. Make more stuff in the United States of America. That's how you make sure we have clean air and clean water. And Kamala Harris policies have done the opposite. The other thing I'd say to folks who are worried about the environment is look, I'm worried about the environment too, but here's what I really worry about. I worry about our food supply. Like, what has gone wrong with our food supply that we have got an obesity epidemic in this country unlike we've ever seen in the history of the world? That really worries me. What are we putting, we have all of these weird childhood diseases that we did not have 3 decades ago, 5 decades ago. Does that suggest that we're putting too much weird stuff in our water or too much weird stuff in our food supply? One of the people that I'm really proud has endorsed this campaign is Bobby Kennedy Jr. And I say that as somebody who was raised by blue-collar Democrats, right? The people who would have been Democrats in the 60s and 70s in this town, those folks have been abandoned by Kamala Harris's Democratic Party. But Bobby Kennedy has this slogan that is so true, and it has there's a lot of real depth built into it. Make America healthy again. You look at our young people, we have skyrocketing rates of mental health problems in the United States of America. We use 5 times as much antidepressants as some of our peer countries in the world. Why are Americans 5 times as depressed as some of these other countries. I think it suggests that we've got to do a better job at real environmental protection, not the fake Kamala Harris environmental protection, which apparently the only thing it means is ship all of our jobs to China. Let's make Americans healthy again. Let's make our water cleaner and our air cleaner, and that's something Donald Trump and I believe in.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. It's Torian with CBS News. You said in an interview with Newsmax yesterday that FEMA was disaster relief was being used to fund to focus on migrants, rather. Donald Trump also said on Truth Social that most, if not all, of the money that FEMA spent is on migrants. FEMA officials say that's just not true. What evidence do you guys have to suggest that?
So here's the evidence. And by the way, I just want to make an observation about these reporters, and I appreciate the question. Is, you know, when people say that they feel endangered by a crowd voicing their opinion, well, look, my friends, the First Amendment goes in both directions, and so you haven't made this criticism, to be clear, but I read some article. It was in some, I forget who published it, but they were like, well, journalists don't feel safe at some of our events. Look, not a single person here is going to harm you. They're just going to speak their mind, and they have every right to do it. So God bless you guys. The First Amendment, we believe in it in this country. But sir, my point is about the focus of our current administration. And if you use resources, but most importantly, if you put people on the task of dealing, let's say, with the massive influx of illegal immigration, then they're going to be distracted from doing their core job of keeping Americans safe in response to a disaster. Each of us, this is true of me, it's true of everybody in the world, we only got so much time to focus, and there's only so much time in the day. And if you take FEMA and you turn it into an agency that resettles illegal immigrants, that's going to take their focus away from keeping people safe after a hurricane. That's basic human reality. And I think there's no way around it. Now, what the fact checkers say, and we'll sort of, you know, we'll try to be as fair to the other side as possible, my friends. What the fact checkers will say is, well, there's a bucket of money that goes to illegal immigrants, and that's a different bucket of money that goes to disaster relief. Well, I'm sure the Biden administration has never moved money from one bucket to the other. In 3.5 years, we know that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are more than willing to move money from one bucket to another if it suits their purpose. They ought to be moving money to the bucket that supports American citizens in the wake of these terrible storms. That's what I would like them to do. But the final point I want to make about this is just bureaucratic focus. Look, I've seen a lot of wild stuff out there on the internet. The problem with what I've seen from the Biden administration is that they're not focused on getting resources to people that need it. When Kamala Harris is out at a fundraiser in San Francisco, meanwhile North Carolina is drowning, North Carolinians have every right to say, where the hell is our vice president and why isn't she focused on us? That focus has got to change. The 82nd Airborne, and this is in 2010, you're never going to hear me praise Barack Obama, you rarely hear me praise Barack Obama, but in 2010, there was a terrible earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. A ton of people lost their lives. A ton of people had their livelihoods destroyed. The 82nd Airborne was in Port-au-Prince, Haiti under Barack Obama 48 hours later. North Carolina is an hour away from the 82nd Airborne's headquarters. Why did it take a week to get the 82nd Airborne on the ground helping American citizens? It's disgraceful. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, Senator. Andrea Shalal with Reuters. I have two questions for you. One is,
sure,
but both of them are local. So one of them is that Senator Sanders was at a rally on Saturday, and he talked about...
Is this Bernie?
Bernie, yes.
I actually like Bernie. He's kind of like a grumpy old man. I like Bernie. Go ahead.
Oh, Well, so he brought up the comments that you've made where he said you've declined to honor the commitment, or to say if the Trump administration would honor the commitment to invest.
JD Vance has become a star in the GOP party. And I said this when we were streaming the debate, the vice presidential debate. I told you guys, I said JD Vance will become a huge star in the GOP party, especially after the debate. The debate cemented his legacy in the GOP party. Everybody likes to listen to JD Vance. He's calm, cool, precise, articulate. He has become a star, guys. You better watch out for 2028 because this man right here, you better watch out because this man is proving himself every single time. Everybody's now talking about JD Vance. Like, this man has critical thinking skills, bro. The way he speaks, he connects with people. Man, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Let's get it.
$500 million in the GM plant and to convert the Cadillac plant to EVs. I wonder if you can just clear that up for us. And then the other question has to do with the very large population of Arab and Muslim Americans here in the area. And I'm wondering whether you're going to meet with them. I know that several mayors, for instance, the mayor of Hamtramck, have endorsed your campaign.
Here, yeah.
But just yesterday, President Trump, former President Trump, said that he had been to Gaza. Later, a campaign staffer said that he had been to Israel, and Gaza is in Israel, which is not true. I wonder if you could just say a few words about Gaza and also why you think Arab Americans and Muslims would do better by voting for your campaign. Thanks.
Well, because, let me answer the first question first. So, neither me nor President Trump has ever said that we want to take any money that's going to Michigan auto workers out of the state of Michigan. We certainly want to invest in Michigan auto workers as much as possible. What we've said is that Kamala Harris is offering table scraps. $500 million when you have an EV mandate that's going to cost 117,000 auto worker jobs. I think that Michigan auto workers deserve more than the table scraps of Kamala Harris's Green New scam. That's what we're talking about. And again, you know, you talk to automakers, you talk to the manufacturers, they'll tell you that electric vehicles are sitting on the lots for 90 days, for 120 days. Meanwhile, the gas-powered cars are sitting on the lots for 15 days or 20 days. If you force Americans to buy electric vehicles they don't want that are made in China, you are going to throw this entire state into poverty, and Donald Trump and I will not stand for it. We're going to fight for these people. We're going to fight for their jobs. We're going to fight for their prosperity. Now, the second question about Arab Americans, I mean, look, we're thrilled to have the mayor's support, and I'm not meeting, to your question, I'm not meeting any Arab American or Muslim American leaders on this particular trip, though we certainly will in future trips to Michigan. You all are going to get sick of me. I'm going to be in Michigan like, 30 times the next 28 days. And to be clear for the fact checkers, when I said I would be in Michigan 30 times, that was a slight exaggeration. That was something... That was exaggeration used to effect. It'll probably be like 6 or 7 times over the next 27 days. But look, I think the reason why, this is one of these issues where obviously Arab Americans often have different views than Jewish Americans on what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Palestine. But I think both Jewish Americans and Arab Americans recognize that what's in the best interest of Israel and Palestine is peace. And Donald J. Trump was the president of peace. And I really think that's it. You know, I saw Kamala Harris said the other day that the biggest threat to the United States of America is Iran. And look, I think Iran's a big threat, but Iran is nothing compared to China. China is the biggest threat confronting this country. But I think, ma'am, it revealed that Kamala Harris seems to be totally fine with starting or escalating a conflict in every continent all over the world. Donald Trump believes peace through strength. Stop the killing, get Americans out of harm's way, and focus on building a peaceful globe. That is how you help Palestinians, that's how you help Israelis, but most importantly, it's how you help Americans.
Thank you for tuning in one more time. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Shout out to Tori B. Shout out to everybody watching the live show. Nikki Lee, God bless you for tuning in. Everybody, Michael Rowe, Lance Robbins, everybody, man. DAC 888, God bless you. Everybody tuning in. You guys are the best. Okay, so I just want to address Michael Rowe says my kid let me see. Michael Rowe says, trust me, it will be very hard for your beautiful daughter to live in the world that they are trying to create. So these are the facts. My daughter is turning 5 in like 11 days, and she was born during Trump's time, right? During Trump's time, while she was born, we had affordability. And it wasn't just affordability that we had. We had money in, let me put it this way, we had more money in the household. Why? Because we didn't have to spend more money to buy stuff. My wife was just talking to me and she's saying, babe, why is the power bill so high? I'm like, oh, you noticed? Because everything is becoming way more expensive. So now, if you're spending more money on bills, how much money would you have to save? Think about it. Because if you check the stats, right? How many Americans actually have $500 in their savings account for emergency right now? How many Americans have $1,000 for emergency right now? Think about it. But 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was affordability, and that made more Americans, that gave more Americans reasons to put a little bit of money to their savings account and say, you know what, this is for rainy days. But if things are being expensive, going off the chart, how do you think people are going to have the time, the energy, the effort to save? Right now, bro, people are just getting by. Bro, people are literally struggling way more than they have ever done before. People are getting by. Bro, we need a break, Michael Rowe. I respect your decision, whoever you're voting for. You know, bro, you've been watching this show for a while. I've been seeing your name in the chat, and I respect your decision, bro. However, we need a break, bro. Bro, we need a break, man. I ain't gonna cap. We need a break, bro. We need a break, bro. And that's it. I don't want to get known no more.
Citizens is peace. We'll do a couple more and then we'll have to hit the road. Sir.
James Dixon, New York Post. When I was a kid, Detroit was the king of manufacturing.
That's right.
In that time, China and Mexico, their rise has come on Detroit's decline. How do you make Detroit build again? What can you do from the White House?
So two big things. First of all, it goes back to President Trump's, I think, his most simple, but also his most specific public policy: drill, baby, drill. The big advantage we have over China, over Russia, over any manufacturer is that we could have effectively free energy right here in the United States of America. Unleash American energy workers, and we'll manufacture much more. But here's something, and this is something that is a real problem for Kamala Harris. She attacks Donald Trump when Donald Trump says that he wants to impose tariffs to protect the jobs of American workers. Well, think about this. Let's say, for example, that you want to manufacture in China, and the wage in China, because sometimes they're employing literal slaves in China, actual slave laborers, is $3 a day. So you can make a product in China paying somebody $3 a day using a literal slave, and then you bring that product into the United States of America. That is the destruction of American manufacturing, because Americans won't, and most importantly, Americans should not be expected to compete with Chinese slave laborers. They deserve to have a good life in their own country. And the only way to protect them from those Chinese companies using slave laborers is to say, if you want to come back into the United States, you're going to pay a big fat tariff before you do it. That is an important part of our pro-manufacturing policy. And anybody who tells you you can bring back American manufacturing without penalizing companies that are using slave laborers, they are lying to you. Let's get real. Let's penalize the people using slave laborers. Let's reward the folks using American workers to build great products. Do one more question.
Thank you, Senator. I wanted to ask you about Bob Woodward's new reporting, specifically about Trump and Putin's calls. Have you had conversations with the former president about his relationship with Putin and what those calls entailed?
I honestly didn't know that Bob Woodward was still alive until you just asked me that question. That's what little I know about Bob Woodward is that he is, I'm going to use a word here. He is a hack. The guy's a hack. So have I talked to Donald Trump about his calls with Vladimir Putin? No. I've never had that conversation with Donald Trump in my life. But if Donald Trump, even if it's true, look, is there something wrong with speaking to world leaders? No? Is there anything wrong with engaging in diplomacy? Kamala Harris's approach has been to hide in a basement, hide from the American people, and hide from world leaders. And you know what that's gotten us? We're on the verge of World War III. It's a disgrace, and it's a complete failure of a foreign policy. One of my favorite Donald Trump moments of his first presidency, you all may remember this, but do you know Kim Jong-un? He's the leader of North Korea, and let's be honest, Kim Jong-un hasn't skipped many meals, okay? So Donald Trump goes to Kim Jong-un, and he meets with him, and all the photographers come in, and President Trump looks at the photographers, and he says, all right, everybody, make us look good, make us look very thin. And Kim Jong-un shoots up like this. He's kind of offended a little bit. But what it showed is Donald Trump's, I see a lot of you laughing, but I'm not just trying to make fun of Kim Jong-un. The point is, you have to go and talk to people. You have to be willing to engage in diplomacy, engage in conversations. That's how you keep the world from falling into disarray and war. And Donald Trump was better at it than anybody over the last 50 years. We'll do one more. We'll do one more here, if we can. I know I said that was the last one, but this guy really wants to ask me a question. It better be a good one, man, because you're.
Thank you, Senator. I represent Polish media, do rzeczy, conservative media. Poland is the best ally America ever had in Europe.
It's a great
You know
ally.
that.
That's right.
Beautiful speech of Donald Trump in 2019 in Warsaw. Sir, Kamala Harris claims that Polish American Catholics would vote for Harris Walz ticket. What is your message to Polish American Catholics and Catholics altogether?
Well, she said it better than I could. My message is vote Trump, and make sure everybody you know votes Trump. Look, Kamala Harris has been the biggest disaster for religious liberty in the history of this country. Kamala Harris, she wants to force Catholic nuns to engage in procedures that violate those Catholic nuns' conscience. Donald Trump and I think we're a big enough country to let Catholic nuns live their lives as they choose and to live out their values as fully as they want to. Kamala Harris has tried to make it so that religious organizations can't do the things that they want to do. Donald Trump and I love our churches and want to empower them to minister to people because we think that the best people to minister are those on the ground, supporting our fellow citizens and making their lives more blessed and easier. And Donald Trump, when he was president, you know who Vladimir Putin was invading? Nobody. Nobody. Under the leadership of Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin kept in his own country, which is where we'd like to keep him. Under the policies of Kamala Harris, Vladimir Putin seems to want to invade a lot of people. And so if you're a Polish Catholic, if you're a Polish American, if you just care about common sense foreign policy and you want religious people to be able to live their faith, Donald Trump is the only ticket in town. Vote Trump for religious freedom, vote Trump for prosperity, vote Trump for world peace. So that unfortunately is going to be the last question, but let me leave you with one final thought. You know, I got to say to you, that other than in raising a family with this beautiful person to my right here, the greatest honor of my life is to be able to run for Vice President of the United States. It is the coolest thing. You get to see this country in a totally different light. I mean, Michigan, one of these reporters asked me earlier when we were doing a private conversation backstage, she said, every time you come to town, the weather is good in Michigan. And I guess my response is, Michigan, elect me vice president. I'll come to town all the time, and we'll keep Michigan weather looking pretty good. But this is the most beautiful country anywhere in the world. We have the best natural resources that the Russians, the Chinese would literally kill for. And on top of it, we've got the most gracious and most generous people anywhere in the world. I really do believe that. I will meet people who tell me that they're struggling to buy groceries under Kamala Harris's economy, but then they'll spend 30 seconds telling me about their life, and then they'll spend 3 minutes telling me that they're praying for my family and asking me how I'm doing. And what that teaches me is that we have a generosity of spirit in the United States of America, that though we have bad leadership, it is never going to destroy what makes this country great in the first place. And that's our people. That's all of you. And I'm so grateful to you. But what I do really worry is that this country is never going to be able to live to its full potential with the broken leadership of Kamala Harris. Groceries are never going to be affordable if we have the broken leadership of Kamala Harris. We're not going to have peace in the world if we have the broken leadership of Kamala Harris. So over the next 27 days, what I'd ask you all to do is to do everything that you can to give the American people a president who is fit to lead and fit to serve this great country. Elect Donald J. Trump. Let's go get it done. Let's do it together, and let's take this country back. God bless you all. Thank you for having me, and thank you for seeing me in the great state of Michigan.
I'm telling you guys, man, this guy called JD Vance, he is building himself, and the people are reacting to him like he he is him. Okay? This man right here is gonna be a big, huge player in 2028. And listen, man, no matter what we say, all of us can all agree on the fact that the world was more at peace in 2016 to 2020, unlike now. So now the word on the street is vote for Trump for world peace. Well, we've heard JD Vance. You know what time it is. You've heard JD Vance. Now let's listen to Tim Walz, okay? We've heard JD Vance, so now it's about time we listen to JD Vance. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Let's get it.
Those are thousands of jobs.
Tim Walz. It's about time we listen to Tim Walz. All right. Let's see what he got to say.
People like Putin flatter Trump, and Trump looks up to him. Because what we know is they can walk all over him. He's easily played. Flattery will get you everywhere with Donald Trump. Look, his own national security advisor warned us he is easily manipulated by people like Putin. But again, it's probably a pretty simple reason. Donald Trump's looking out for Donald Trump. That's what he does. Now, the one that I have to tell you as a governor, and for many of you here, this one makes my blood boil. When we were struggling because of Donald Trump's incompetency during the COVID pandemic, we were trying to get whatever materials we could, COVID testing, whatever we could get. It turns out now that Donald Trump was sending COVID machines to Vladimir Putin that we couldn't get in our states. Every day. So, and now, as we watch in our hearts go out, and as governors and as American citizens, we see the heartache, the turmoil, the loss, the trauma that happened after Hurricane Helene and a natural disaster.
Bro, what did I just hear now? Did he just say the OG, the 45th? Some people say he might be the 47th. The legendary Trump was sending to the other guy. Bro, these people always bring up new news every time. Just so I feel like the Dems really love Russia. Because anything is Russia. All they have to say is Russia. Like, why, bro?
And we know we work together. You saw it right here during the Davis fire. I watched all of you, many of you. You stopped campaigning and started collecting goods for people who were in the fires. You stopped doing politics and other things to look out for your neighbors. But now we've got Donald Trump's staff telling us that Donald Trump was refusing to send aid to disasters until he found out how the people in those areas voted. Now, I know that the bar has been lowered on these things, but can we all just agree this is the kind of stuff that would have ended political careers before they started? Donald Trump is a risk to our national security and can't get anywhere near the White House. You know he will say and do whatever is good for Donald Trump. But here's the thing. That's not Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris will stand up to thugs like Vladimir Putin, and she's made it clear. And here's why, and I love this. From her first day as a prosecutor all the way up to being vice president, she walked in the courtroom the first time, and she said she uttered 5 words in that courtroom. Kamala Harris, for the people. Kamala Harris, for the people. Took on the predators, took on the fraudsters, trying to get people out of their homes, returning money to them, people who tried to take union pensions. She stood up to transnational gangs trying to human traffic or move drugs, and she stood up to corporate interests. And this is the thing that we're all hungry for. She never hesitated to reach across the aisle and work together to solve problems.
Pat.
That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. Now, I'm proud to be her running mate. And she oftentimes says this: where could a kid from Oakland in a middle-class family run with a kid who grew up around the farms of rural Nebraska? When we talk small towns, there's something we do. We try and out-small town each other. So you say, I grew up in a small town. How many people? 400. People go, oh, impressive, 300. And then I will say 24 classmates. And they're like, all right, that's not bad. That's not bad. But what she says is, growing up in a small town, where else in America can a kid who grows up in a small town in rural Nebraska and a kid who grows up in Oakland and her mom, single mom, working hard to get him a house, where else but in this country can those two be on a ticket to be president? Let's see. Look. You know what we know? Those who want to divide us, what Kamala knows, whether it's Oakland or whether it's Butte, Nebraska, what we learned around those type of people, we didn't grow up in the same place, but she says we grew up around the same people. People who knew you took care of your neighbors. You looked out for the common good. Those are the values that we grew up with. Those are the things that motivated us to run for public office. The same thing that motivated Kamala Harris to run for those offices that she did. And look, how nice will it be to have those values in the White House of the United States? Now you might know it's a group of like-minded folks here, but not everybody thinks the same. There's some folks on the other side got a little bit different track record on how they view these things. And you don't need me here. You know in Nevada the pain you felt under the Trump years. 24,000 jobs lost in this state alone. Now, he may tell a different story, but he's not telling the truth. Because the truth is, jobs were lost in this. Right here, Kamala Harris has created 285,000 jobs, and income's up $9,000 on those jobs. Companies have announced over $10 billion in private sector investments in this state through clean energy projects like solar and battery manufacturing. Right here. Donald Trump says he wants to roll back the Inflation Reduction Acts. And I think today, $500 million in Senator Vance's Ohio, and he called it like it's chump change or table scraps. Those are thousands of jobs. Those are making America energy independent. Those are bringing down our costs. But you know what? That's not who Donald Trump is interested in. I'll give him this. At least he just point blank said it. He invited his rich buddies down to Mar-a-Lago. They're sitting there, and he's giving a speech, and he said, look at all of you. You're rich as hell, and I'm going to give you a tax cut. He kept his word. He kept his word. And every single year in his budgets, he proposed cutting Social Security. And now, you heard it last week, no matter what he says, trying to tell you now that he's responsible for the Affordable Care Act that protects you.
Cap.
The only reason we still have it was because John McCain stood up and said no. Look, you all know it. This country and this world can't take 4 more years of Donald Trump. It's that simple. Now all of a sudden they're pretending. I had to be correct. Sometimes I have to be corrected on the things I say. I will own that. I said they didn't have a plan. My bad. They do have a plan. It's called Project 2025. I did say this. They said, oh, I don't know anything about that. And I said, well, Senator Vance, you wrote the foreword to the architect's book. You might know something. If you write, I don't know, I've never written someone's foreword to a book, but I'm assuming if you do that, you remember them. That would just be me. But I do know this, as a football coach, you take the time to draw up a playbook, you're going to run the plays. You're going to run the plays. And those plays are tax cuts for the wealthy, undermining the ACA, gutting the protections that we have on pre-existing conditions. But Kamala Harris gets it, and she gets it because she grew up middle class like so many of us. She understood it. The economy works best when it's fair. We have a saying in Minnesota, pretty simple one, I bet you have it here too. We all do better when we all do better. That one's not that hard. She laid out a plan, not a concept of a plan, a real plan. An opportunity economy that says every single person matters and everybody will be left up and not left behind. A child tax credit, so in a child's first year of life, that family will have the ability to buy that crib, buy that car seat, make sure that they can tackle skyrocketing costs around child care. You know, not all of us can just count on a family member, but there's got to be a way, and Kamala Harris laid it out to make sure everything from universal pre-K to making sure child care is affordable. That's right. And I don't know, I know you're busy people, you don't have time, but the Vice President was on this morning and laid out a plan for something so many of us know is absolutely critical to give families peace of mind. How do we care for our loved ones? How do we care for our loved ones when they're getting older and need the care they have? And what Kamala Harris proposed was having Medicare for the very first time expand to cover home care and home health care. And here's something else. Imagine this, and it's been this long. Also to have Medicare, and some of you out there, I'm getting there a little, getting a little short in the hair and a little long in the tooth. Proposing that Medicare, because it's about making us healthy, covers vision and hearing for our seniors. She got asked how she's going to pay for it. She's already got the plan. For the first time in history, she negotiated with Big Pharma to make sure that we can now negotiate for Medicare drugs. The savings we make from that can pay for our senior care and expanding Medicare. And just say something about, talking about price gouging, this idea of insulin. If any of you know to get this, capping insulin at $35, some of you know this. Here's the deal about price gouging. Businesses have the right to make money. We're capitalists. We know how that works. But it's got to be fair. It's got to be moral. It costs about $5 to manufacture a vial of insulin, and they were selling it for $800. Now it's capped at $300. So when we talk price gouging, and I was glad to see this, President Biden made a statement, airlines charging people exorbitant amounts to fly out of Florida to get out of the hurricane. That's price gouging. That's price gouging. But here's the thing, the American dream is out there, getting more folks in. This is a state of doers. This is a state of entrepreneurs. This is a state that knows it. For the first time, a tax credit to start your business has been frozen at $5,000. That's not enough to get the average cost to start a small business and get it off the ground, about $40,000 for folks. She's proposed $50,000 tax credit to start it out. And I know this one for all of you, and you got to hear a little bit of it, and I baffled by some of this. Last week, I had a little conversation with Senator Vance, and it was about housing. It was about housing, and the solution is we should just build on federal lands or something. And I said there's no federal lands around Minneapolis, so what are you going to do? But the point is, the housing issue is real. This is something for many of us. When you bought that first house, that's everything. And it's everything because it's your biggest investment. It's generational wealth. But it's much more than that. It's the safety for your family. It's the place you gather for holidays. It's the place you bring your kids home from the hospital the first time in that house. For these guys, they don't ever want to mention the other side of this. The other side of it is you got folks buying up houses to sell them as commodities, just like they buy stocks and bonds. Prices in this county have increased 50% since 2017. You know it. Big Wall Street firms. I had to look, hedge fund manager, venture capitalist. That's not the job most of us do. Those are the facts of the folks buying up. There was a case here, one company buying 260 homes in a single day. That's to make profit. Look, everybody has the right to sell their home, but you have a right to work on a market that works. And those moments in your life that make a difference. That's why Kamala Harris has a plan, build 3 million new homes and have a $25,000 down payment assistance for folks to get started. Young folks out here. Look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to have that home. And we know this. When people have homes and stability, and they have jobs, and their kids get off to school with food in their belly, everybody does better. Everybody does better. So look, what you know is, Kamala Harris and I get this. The idea that we're fighting for, she comes out to that beautiful song, Freedom, coming out Freedom. Well, it's more than that. It's the freedom for you to live the life you want to live. That's what it's about. And I know in this room, there's Republicans in this room. And there are. And I say this because those of us remember, the Republican Party in this country has contributed much to this nation. They have been there. Look, we don't always agree on some of this, but I will guarantee you, when the old Republicans talk about freedom, they meant it. They meant it. Now, these guys, Donald Trump, turns out when he's talking about freedom, that government should be free to be in your doctor's office, to be in that school library, or to be pretty obsessed about being in your bedroom. I would argue the party of Ronald Reagan would want government out of all of those things. Now look, Donald Trump is out there telling folks they return to power. Don't worry about your reproductive freedoms. I got it. He told all the women here, he told you he would be your protector. So the other day in that little debate I mentioned, they're kind of affecting this Project 2025. They want to monitor of women's pregnancies. And I saw Senator Vance, there were a couple moments of clarity where he said, well, people just don't trust us on these things, And that's where my wife is really happy. Some of you saw me face on this. I almost blurred out. No kidding. No kidding. Look, to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, women don't trust you. And I heard some of you, I know this isn't about a golden rule. The very simple thing on so many of these things that make the world go round is just mind your own damn business and things will go better. I don't want to speak for the Republicans here, but I got to feel like that's a mantra of the old Republican Party. Just mind your own business on this. And for some of you, it gets very personal. And look, there are women out there that don't want to have, their names are household names now because they nearly died trying to avoid these Trump abortion bans. And for me, and for so many of you out there, they're going another step further, banning things like fertility treatments. Those are our decisions. Those are our decisions to make. Whatever family you want to have, or no family, or whatever that family looks like, that's your decision, not government's decision. And I certainly don't want Donald Trump making that decision. So for Glenn and I, years of infertility treatment. And when we had access to health care, which all of us need. So if you have health care, you have access to that. Finally, on that day our daughter was born, some of you have heard me say this, most powerful in the universe. We named her Hope because we finally had it. She and her brother mean the world to me. And that's what this election is about. It's about freedom. And I want to make that appeal again. The party of Reagan needs to stand on personal freedoms, not with Donald Trump's way of doing things. When Kamala Harris talks about freedom, she means your freedom to make your own choices about health care, about your family, about the books you read, about the life you want to live. And I'm going to go back to this. These guys have the audacity, especially seniors here. My mom's 89. I'm so proud of her. She's still living in the house where I grew up and graduated out of high school from. She's there. And I can tell you this. She worked her whole life paying into Social Security. It was there when my dad died. It was there when my little brother's in elementary school, so my mom would provide those benefits. She uses her Social Security check to pay her bills and live her life with dignity. Now look, every year in Donald Trump's budget, he tried to cut it. Called it a Ponzi scheme. And J.D. Vance said it's the roadblock to fiscal sanity. But I'll say this. From where they're standing, that might actually make sense. Because my feeling is, I don't know. I've never been a billionaire. So if you are one, my guess is you don't give one damn if your Social Security check comes or not. But if you're my mom, it's pretty damn important that your Social Security check comes. So look. Freedom to make your health care decisions. Freedom to live in dignity in your senior years. Freedom to be there if tragedy strikes you and that there's a safety net there. We oftentimes talk about this. This is a state that you know a little something about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You know how to do that. But the thing is, sometimes in life, you don't have any boots. And they're loaned to you by Social Security. They're loaned to you by your neighbors so that you can get back on your feet. Those are the things that freedom means. And I got to tell you, this one for all of you, for all of us, this piece of freedom is the one that we should hold most dear. The freedom to send our little ones in their best clothes to school without being shot dead in their classroom. Look, there's a whole lot of you out here just like me, veterans, hunters, gun owners. A lot of you, you're here. Look, we understand the Second Amendment. We understand what that is. But we also understand this is not a discussion about the Second Amendment. We can do common sense things to withhold our first responsibility, the protection of our children. So, I reject the notion that you can't protect the Second Amendment and protect our children. Other countries do it. Why can't we? Why can't we do it? Donald Trump told us to get over it, and J.D. Vance said it's a fact of life. Kamala Harris was very clear. She's the one who said it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Look, I know I'm preaching to the choir. You get it. But I also want to tell you, our recital's in 28 days, choir. And we need to sing. And when we sing, we get to turn the page on these guys. Put in a new generation of leadership with a new way forward. And we, as Americans, get the greatest privilege to self-determine where we're going. Not just for the next 4 years, but the next 40 years. Not just for a single state or a single country, but the world is looking for us to bring back the values of America. So you've heard me say it. It's all gas, no brakes for 28 days. I've been saying to people, we'll sleep when we're dead. And I had somebody walk up and said, you're being way too literal. You look like hell, man. So, but it's okay. We do it, and you're here, and we're excited, and we're going to do the work because we believe in the promise of America. So 28 days, and the Vice President said it. When we fight, we win. When we fight, when we vote, let's go.
Man, thank you for tuning in one more time. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. You guys are the best. You know what time it is. We just heard from some people say I don't, I watch out for things that I say, but some people call him, Teamy. Some people call him Team, whatever y'all call him. But we just heard from Team Walz. You know what time it is, man. Sometimes when I hear some of the things that he says, I'm like, how do the people listening to him think he's actually saying the facts? Who has time to be monitoring you guys? Nobody has time. All right, let's listen to Governor DeSantis.
And this is a Fox News alert. Florida is once again bracing for another massive storm. Hurricane Milton is currently a Category 5 hurricane barreling across the Gulf of Mexico right towards the Florida Peninsula on the east coast of Florida. And hurricane warnings have been issued for the entire Tampa area. Evacuations have been issued. It has a population of 3.3 million people, along with neighboring metros of Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Sarasota, even inland Orlando, where another 3 million people live. This is a fast-evolving, extremely dangerous situation. They're especially worried about swells of up to 20 feet, but the state of Florida, as usual, is well prepared. Now, you can't say the same about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Now, they've been MIA in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, but especially in North Carolina. Now, today, Kamala tried to insinuate that Governor DeSantis does not want federal help. Well, Governor DeSantis said he didn't even know she called. That is according to Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas. FEMA, he's saying they're bankrupt. According to FEMA's own website, over $1 billion went to Harris, Biden, unvetted illegal immigrants. And this week, she is focused on fawning interviews, as I've been telling you, with the Call Me Daddy podcast, Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern, and the ladies of The View, instead of being in North Carolina, which she and Joe abandoned. It is the worst hurricane to hit the Southeast since Katrina, and they have been missing in action. They haven't lifted a finger to help, and now suddenly she's pretending to care and says this. Take a look.
NBC is reporting Governor DeSantis is ignoring your calls on hurricanes, resources, and help. How does that hurt the situation here?
Moments of crisis, if nothing else, should really be the moment that anyone who calls themselves a leader says they're going to put politics aside and put the people first. People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games at this moment in these crisis situations, these are the height of emergency situations, is just utterly irresponsible, and it is selfish, and it is about political gamesmanship instead of doing the job that you took an oath to do, which is to put the people first.
Make no mistake, Hurricane Helene is Kamala's Katrina. Joining us now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is with us on the latest on preparation. All right. I saw the statement from your office. Number one, you did not hear about a call from Kamala. You would have taken the call, you said. I had you on my radio and TV show before Helene hit. You told me, and I had Governor Kemp on, and he told me, in your case, you had 30,000 utility trucks staged to go in right after the hurricane. You had food, water, medicine, supplies ready to go right in behind the hurricane, as usual. I'm assuming you have the same thing for Milton. Am I wrong, Governor?
No, you're right. And Hurricane Helene was a Category 4 storm. It did significant damage to the state of Florida. We've been on this footing now for 2 weeks straight in terms of preparation response. And now we have an even bigger storm that's bearing down, as you pointed out, on a very populated area, potentially could do even more damage. And we've been laser focused on leveraging all resources available, including from the federal government. And I've been in touch with both FEMA and the president, as well as marshaling all our state agencies and working to support our local communities. And so for Kamala Harris to try to say that my sole focus on the people of Florida is somehow selfish is delusional. She has no role in this. In fact, she's been vice president for 3.5 years. I've dealt with a number of storms under this administration. She has never contributed anything to any of these efforts. And so what I think is selfish
Has she ever
is her
called
trying to
before?
blunder into this. No. And here's
Has
the
she ever
thing.
called before?
She has no role. No, she has no role in this process. I'm in contact with the President of the United States. I'm in contact with FEMA director. I'm obviously managing all our state agencies. We're supporting all our local government. And I will say this. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign. She's trying to get some type of an edge. She knows she's doing poorly, and so she's playing these political games. I don't have time for political games. I've got people.
Now, I know people have different opinions and things that they want to say, but nobody has anything on my boy DeSantis, because this guy right here, he has been working hard. Florida has been booming. Everybody, my friends that I have in Florida, every one of them tell me, yo, this is the best times in Florida's history. You know what I mean? Like, this guy has been working hard, and nobody should say anything about DeSantis, because DeSantis right here, he popping.
Peoples whose lives are on the line. I've got peoples whose homes and their possessions are on the line, and we are focused 100% on that mission. I'm not worried about playing her political games. And so she is being selfish by trying to blunder into this when we're working just fine.
You know, you had properly staged. You are ready for Milton. You have all the utility trucks, you have food, you have water, you have supplies, all staged, all ready to come in right behind the hurricane, as you always do. Governor Kemp, same thing. Governor McMaster, same thing. They have been missing in action. It took FEMA nearly an entire week to get to the people in North Carolina, and we still don't know the death count in North Carolina. It is the worst, to me, response ever in the history of hurricanes in this country, Governor. And for her to be going on a Stern, Colbert, The View, Call Me Daddy, instead of being in North Carolina is unconscionable.
Well, I'll tell you this, Sean. We're going to handle this incoming storm. It is right now much more powerful than what Helene was. And we'll see. They say it's going to weaken before it hits, but we can't assume that. So this has the potential to be one of the most damaging storms in the history of our country. And can we not just focus on the livelihoods and the well-being of the people? Why is she trying to politicize this? Why is she putting her campaign ahead of the well-being of the people of Florida? We're laser focused on their well-being. This is going to be a massive effort. There's going to be things we're going to have to respond to that we've probably never had to respond in this kind in the history of our state. And we're going to do it. And we're going to keep our eye on the ball. And we're not going to let her nonsense distract us from the task at hand.
Governor, as a fellow Floridian, if there's anything I can do to help you, if you need these airwaves, you need my radio show, we are on board for anything you need. I am urging people to go to SamaritansPurse.org. They're doing some really good work in all of these southern states. And we appreciate you being on, Governor. We're praying for our state tonight. Thank you. Hey.
My boy said we're not going to let her nonsense distract us. Yeah, that's right, DeSantis. Look, keep cooking. Ladies and gentlemen, I am apologizing for my internet. I am using my mobile hotspot because I was affected by Hurricane Ellen. So you guys bear with me. You guys are the best. You keep tuning in. You keep coming back. God bless you. All right. More from DeSantis.
All right, live, Governor DeSantis in Florida speaking about the coming hurricane. Let's listen in.
Landfall on the Florida Peninsula, the west coast of Florida, sometime late Wednesday evening, maybe early Thursday morning in the wee hours is kind of where it's looking now. But it has moved a little bit slower than projected over the last 36 hours. There is still a lot of uncertainty about where exactly the eye of the storm is going to hit. I think the most recent models have it somewhere in Manatee County, just south of Tampa Bay. But I would just tell people, one, there's going to be impacts far beyond wherever the eye of the storm is. Two, you could make landfall anywhere from Citrus County down into southwest Florida. We'll know more over the next 12 to 18 hours. But just cones, all this stuff you see, the impacts will be broader than that, particularly with respect to storm surge on the west coast of Florida. I know that there's a lot of folks who have evacuated, who are in those areas, and you absolutely could get whacked with really serious storm surge. Really, almost every place on the west coast of Florida could get major storm surge. Today I held a joint call with state legislative leaders and the cabinet to brief them on Florida's efforts on the storm and about our resources that are being offered and being utilized by the state of Florida. We also did a similar call to Florida's congressional delegation. I've also spoken to the president and the FEMA administrator. We've had our request approved for pre-landfall. We will get a landfall, major disaster declaration approved once the storm hits, and that will be things like debris removal and individual assistance. We still have 51 counties that are under a state of emergency. There's pretty much warnings or watches on almost the entire Florida peninsula. A lot of attention is being paid to the storm surge on the west coast of the Florida peninsula, and rightfully so, because that's probably the most serious threat to people's lives and property. But this storm is going to go across the Florida peninsula, and it's going to exit on the east coast of Florida into the Atlantic Ocean, likely still as a hurricane. So that is going to bring significant impacts all across the state. So just be prepared for that. That may mean mobile homes, even interior, other structures that may not be hurricane proof. That could create hazards, rivers, other bodies of water as you have more rain and you have flooding. That could be an issue. And then you could have surge on the east coast of Florida. You could have erosion. You can have different things with the coast. So this is not just an event about the west coast of Florida. That will be where the initial impacts and probably the most significant. But the impacts will not be limited there. So here we are at the Florida Horse Park. We have staging areas around different parts of the state. And there are different sites that are doing different things. I mean, for example, you go to like Lake City, you got a lot of the utility line there that are staged. We've had a lot of people staged in the Tampa Bay area for utility and other things. But this one right here is really good. I'm not saying Ocala is not going to have any impacts from the storm, but we fully anticipate be able to move people where they need to go very quickly once the storm passes. And we have different partners that the state contracts with. They have personnel, I think, as you see, they camp out here. This is where they are, and then they're able to respond. We got massive amounts of equipment here. Land, air, sea vehicles, supplies, generators, equipment, bucket trucks, you name it, this stuff is here. And so this is just one of many sites that are ready to go. The reason why we do state of emergency, we did it over the weekend on Saturday. We knew the storm wasn't likely to hit until middle of the week at the earliest, because you want to start amassing these resources, and that's what we've done. I think it's been really, really important. So on this property, you got over 2,000 pieces of equipment, including a lot of pumps, a lot of generators, light plants, display boards, restroom trailers, laundry trailers, forklifts, air conditioning units, electrical equipment, water hoses, bunk trailers, and rollback trucks. 400 personnel here, including riggers, equipment operators, pump crews, and drivers. Fuel trucks are also here to be deployed as needed. Florida DEM is currently in the process of completing 1,200 missions. So far, you're looking at deploying hundreds of thousands of shelf-stable meals, hundreds of thousands of water bottles, hundreds of thousands of sandbags, a lot of tarps and a lot of generators, and many other things. And so that is being resourced to the counties. And then, of course, we also have staging areas that we'll do with our pods once the storm passes. We have utilized flood protection devices in areas to protect against storm surge. We've now deployed more than 11,000 feet of those Tiger dams. That's really important to protect hospitals, wastewater facilities, and electrical infrastructures. Of course, we've been outfitting counties for years now with Starlink internet, so that's going to be available to be used as needed. In terms of fuel, we amassed a lot of fuel before this particular emergency. We actually had it for Helene, didn't really need to use it for that. We have 268,000 gallons of diesel, 110,000 gallons of regular gas on standby.
Can we all just agree on the fact that DeSantis has proven himself to be a problem solver and to be quick on his feet? Because he's been handling all of this with strength and speed. If he ever decides to run again in 2028 or 2032, his performance will be just speaking for itself. He wouldn't have to talk too much. His performances will speak for itself. Shout out to DeSantis, man.
That's just from the state. You still have the fuel at the ports that are being brought in. But then we also have another 1.2 million gallons of both diesel and gas that are currently en route to the state. Now, I know there's been a lot of lines at gas stations. You obviously have an inordinate demand for fuel, much more than would typically happen. What's happening is there's long lines, the gas stations run out of fuel, but the fuel supply is available. So then they ask for more fuel to be brought. And so what we're doing is we've authorized Florida highway patrols to escort with the siren, so they get there quicker, major fuel trucks. So we've had 43 fuel trucks that have already been escorted by Florida Highway Patrol to deliver fuel to stations, particularly in the anticipated impact area. We're also working with companies like Circle K, Gate, Racetrack, Wawa, Shell, and Walmart to ensure fuel trucks are working 24/7 to keep fuel delivered as it comes into our ports. There's no longer fuel coming into some of the West Coast ports like Tampa and Manatee, but they've got a lot of fuel there on dockside that is going to continue to be used. And I spoke with both ports of Tampa and Manatee today, and they've got a lot of fuel. So that's continuing to happen. And then fuel has been coming into East Coast ports. That's probably going to stop soon. Maybe it's already stopped now. But again, there's a lot of fuel that's on hand that can be brought out on the dockside, and that's what we're looking to continue to see happen. Debris removal from Hurricane Helene. I think most people know the counties and the cities, they have contracts for debris removal after a storm. There was not necessarily great job all around on some of the contractors in places like Manatee, Sarasota, Hillsborough counties. We saw this debris once it was clear there was going to be some type of storm this weekend. We decided to create a state support debris mission. And what we've done is we've mandated the landfills are open 24 hours. We had one county where they didn't have anyone there manning it. We opened it up forcibly, make sure that debris can be brought in. So that's Florida Department of Transportation. They've now deployed over 300 dump trucks so that work to remove debris 24/7, and they're going to continue to do it all day today and as long as they can tomorrow before we start to feel impacts from the onset of the storm. So as of this morning, Florida Department of Transportation has removed over 1,300 truckloads of debris in a little over 48 hours. That's a huge, huge amount. Now, there was issues, so the most debris was probably in the Pinellas County beaches. You also had Manatee, the barrier islands like Anna Maria, a lot of debris. That was our initial focus. Sarasota also had a lot of debris on their barrier islands, and I guess their contractor kind of left them holding the ball. So we've now surged over 100 FDOT vehicles between Manatee and Sarasota working to step in where the contractors left off. And we're going to continue doing that again all the way until it's no longer safe to do so. We've made a huge dent in this. The more debris we can get picked up, the less damage is going to happen, whether that's floating into the Gulf of Mexico, whether it's projectiles that go into other buildings. We have hundreds of state search and rescue personnel, a total of 26 teams embedded in potential impact sites along the West Coast to begin immediate rescue operations as soon as the storm passes, should the need arise. I know a lot of people have left, and hopefully there's not a need for a lot of rescues, but those personnel will be there if they need. We have 5,000 National Guard that are on duty. That'll expand to 8,000 very, very soon. We have a total of 34 search and rescue aircraft. We've gotten a lot of support from other states, and we thank them for that. We have 450 tactical vehicles, including 140 high-wheeled vehicles, aerial, water, and ground National Guard search and rescue teams. This is probably the largest National Guard mobilization in advance of a storm in Florida history. We also have the Florida State Guard, 10 maritime crews, 3 high-water UTVs, 2 UH-60 Blackhawks, 4 drone teams, 15 cut and toss crews, 2 amphibious rescue crews, and almost 200 Florida State Guard soldiers. Linemen and power restoration resources are being marshaled. We now have over 43,000 linemen who are being brought in from as far away as California. So we appreciate them for power restoration. We've also assisted with the evacuation of 300 healthcare facilities in the potential path of the storm. State veteran nursing homes that are currently located in the cone are accepting families of residents to shelter with them, as they are all built to withstand Cat 5 hurricane winds, and they're outside of flood zones. Florida Disaster Fund. This was activated after Ian, Idalia, and Helene. If you want to support for Milton, go to floridadisasterfund.org. This is really, really significant way to help people. You should be executing your plan now. If you're going to get out now. You have time today. Time will be running out very shortly if you wait any longer. Of course, there's a lot of mandatory evacs that have been done. We have done the shoulders on the I-4 and the I-75. Veterans Expressway and Suncoast Parkway tolls have been waived. Those can also be used as evacuation routes. I-4 is doing a lot better today than yesterday. Still traffic, but that's it. That's the norm for that. I-75 northbound, 20 to 30% higher volumes. Alligator Alley is pretty jammed right now. We have an unprecedented effort underway. I want to thank everyone that's been involved It's not easy, especially when you've just responded to a Category 4 storm, Helene, to have it done. I know everybody's tired. Trust me, we get it. We're wearing out the Celsius at the state EOC, but what you're doing is important. Hang in there. And
Once again, if you are in Florida and you have been given the notice to evacuate, please make sure that you evacuate. Do not wait until it is too late. Okay, here we go. Let's listen more about the hurricane. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Let's get it.
So for more on all this now, Trump transition team co-chair, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is here. Going to play in a moment here. The director of FEMA was with Brett last night, but President Trump is well familiar with Florida. Is he doing something now before the storm hits? Let's start there.
President Trump is continuing to do what we've seen him do in the wake of Hurricane Helene, reaching out and trying to provide support directly for those who need it the most. It's heartbreaking, Bill and Dana, just to see those who are still trying to recover in the wake of Helene, now they're in Florida, recognizing that there is a even bigger hurricane that's headed their way. I think one of the most inspiring things and hopeful things that's come in the wake of these disasters is how many of our fellow Americans are stepping up to help fill the gap in the federal government and in some cases the state government's failure to meet the needs of people in these communities. I was there in North Carolina a couple of days ago. And really, I can't put into words just the devastation and the sense of loss that people feel there, where their vehicles, their homes, their small businesses, their jobs, literally swept away and gone in an instant. I was asking a local mayor there of a town with a population of less than 500 people, what about insurance? And they said most people don't have flood insurance because this is not an area that's prone to flooding in their lifetimes. And yet here they said this is a 500-year flood that they experienced. I've been raising money through my nonprofit, We Must Protect. We're deploying supplies there to North Carolina, chainsaws, Starlink setups, generators, fuel. And of course, we're going to continue to be here for our fellow Americans in Florida as well. They need help now. And unfortunately, what I saw there in North Carolina was a reminder of what we experienced in Maui last year in the wake of those historic fires. FEMA was saying, we're here, we're on the ground. But what I saw in Hawaii was they were in the town, in the city. They were not out in the communities that needed their help the most. I heard the same from these residents of these very rural communities in North Carolina. They don't have FEMA knocking on their door. They don't have FEMA approving contracts to go and get people to bring the excavators to start clearing that debris to prevent another major disaster from happening should they get more rainfall coming through. The scale of this is just impossible to convey in words. The number one message that people shared with me and asked me to share with others was, please don't forget us. A long road ahead for all of them, and we've got to continue to stand with them, whether or not our government, the Harris-Biden administration, is doing their job or not.
Tulsi, last night, the FEMA director was on special report with Brett Baier. Watch here.
We have been on the ground since before Hurricane Helene hit Florida and before it crossed over North Carolina. And what I would say is just because somebody doesn't see a person in a FEMA shirt doesn't mean that we're not in the area. The entire federal family is there to support this response. We've been there. We will continue to be there as long as it's needed to make sure we're meeting everybody's needs.
Do you think FEMA needs to be enlarged?
I think FEMA needs to better use its resources and be able to cut through the bureaucratic red tape that gets in the way of delivering direct response to people there. they are not good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. We've seen that. I've seen that in disaster after disaster, where you have FEMA literally keeping their employees and workers in the Four Seasons and five-star hotels, while people who have been impacted by these disasters are quite literally homeless or staying in tents or finding places to stay in shelters. This is a major problem with FEMA, where they're saying, oh, well, we've got this covered. It's just simply not the case in my experience in so many of these disasters that I've seen, that I've been on the ground for. They're not providing the support for the people who need it most. People are being rejected even when they're applying for the $750 of assistance that Vice President Harris announced there in Charlotte, North Carolina. The needs are far greater than FEMA is providing. They're focused too much on their bureaucracy and not actually focused on those who need it the most.
All right, Ted Budd is from North Carolina. He was on with Sean last night. This is how he characterizes the response thus far.
This has been characterized by lack of speed, lack of coordination, and misplaced priorities all over. But when I talk to the boots on the ground, literally the boots on the ground today, 18th Airborne Corps, some out of Kentucky from the 101st, some out of Fort Liberty from 82nd, they were ready. Like Senator Tillis said, they were ready day one. But again, there was a lot of bureaucratic hand-wringing at the top that didn't let these folks go to work.
Your program, We Must Protect, is raising a lot of money, well over $300,000 so far. So we hope to get those numbers higher, and we'll find out what happens next.
Thank you.
Tulsi, thank you for your time.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here.
Thank you for tuning in one more time. You know what time it is. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you for tuning in. You guys are the best. You guys are the best. You guys are the best. Again, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. I need to fix my internet, man. It's like, how do I even fix it? Because I do have internet, but it's not working.
Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, hearing all that and probably knew it already, joins us live from the Emergency Management Headquarters in Tallahassee. Governor, you've been there quite often. What's the greatest challenge with Milton as opposed to Helene or others you've had to deal with over the last 7 years?
Well, I think as Janice mentioned, this is tracking very close to that Tampa Bay area. I would note that anyone on the western peninsula of Florida, just wherever that eye wall is scheduled to go across now on these cones, that can shift. I think right now they have it just south of Tampa Bay in Manatee County. It could shift further north, and it could shift further south in terms of having the most immediate impacts. But that Tampa Bay area is very low-lying. Pinellas County, where I grew up, is surrounded by water. It's a peninsula. It is just vulnerable to storm surge generally. This is a storm that's going to be hitting sometime Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. The water is already going to be high with the tide. So that's a huge, huge concern. Now, it had gotten up to 180 mile an hour when it was going towards the Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico. That is an incredibly powerful storm. It has weakened since then. It may strengthen today. The forecasts are that it will make landfall weaker than it is today. Let's pray that that's the case. The surge is going to be a big enough problem, and hopefully the winds are manageable. Most of the buildings in Florida are going to be able to handle a Category 3 storm. So there's a lot going on. And oh, by the way, we just had a Category 4 storm impact a lot of people up the west coast of Florida. One of the issues that we saw in places like the Pinellas County beaches and Manatee County beaches was there was a lot of debris, and these local governments have to pick it up. They have contractors that do it, but it wasn't being done fast enough So I did this weekend. I took all of our state agencies, any truck we had anywhere in the state who's involved in normal missions, we diverted it over to those barrier islands. We're doing a 24/7 debris mission. So we've been able in 48 hours with our state assets be able to do as much debris removal as any of the contractors who've been doing this for almost 2 weeks.
Wow.
We actually had to pry open one of the landfills in Pinellas County because it wasn't operating 24/7 as my executive order did. But we've made a big dent in that. And the issue is if you have this debris laying out, it can become projectiles. And then with the storm surge, it creates more damage. So it's very difficult. We're going to get hit basically 2 weeks on the dot from getting hit by Helene. But we felt it was important that we did that. We also have now close to 40,000 utility linemen in the state of Florida are en route. And remember, there's a lot of these workers that are still in Georgia and North Carolina and those places. We've had to bring them in all the way from California. So they're going to be ready to do the power restoration mission. And then we'll have 8,000 Florida National Guard when the storm hits. All our urban search and rescue, our Florida State Guard, Fish and Wildlife, all that will be there, ready to go. So we're prepared for this. This is not easy. I think it's been very taxing on our citizens to have to go through this. Just as you're starting to pick up the pieces from Helene, now you see another monster storm bearing down. But we'll get through this. I think the important thing today is you still have time to execute your plan. You do not have to get on the interstate and drive hundreds of miles. There are shelters open all throughout the state of Florida. In your county, there's shelters that are in higher ground and that are hurricane proof. So if you don't want to get on the interstate, you don't have to. And there's a wide variety of options. So if you are in one of those surge prone areas, take action now. We have all day today. As we get into tomorrow, you're going to start seeing effects most likely in Wednesday afternoon.
And in fact, Governor, I was down in Florida yesterday, and I know that a lot of the stores are running out of water. The gas stations are running low on gas. A lot of people who were impacted by Helene actually lost their cars. And so there are lines out the door at car rental places for people trying to get out. And as well, you've got your emergency services people, and the cops are going door to door in these A-zone evacuation areas saying, you've got to get out. Because once this storm hits, you guys are not going to be able to go and save them. They've got to save themselves by getting out now, right?
Yeah, and so on the transportation, because you raise a good point, the counties are providing transportation for folks that don't have it. And then the state has entered into an agreement with Uber. So if you need a ride to a shelter, you can go on Uber. There's a code for Milton Relief. And so take advantage of that. Absolutely. And you should do that. But yes, you run from the water and you hide from the wind. If we end up with a Category 3 storm, most of the places in Florida, particularly with our building codes, if you hunker down, in and of itself, you'll probably be okay. But the water, you just can't contend with Mother Nature. If you have 10 feet of that surging in, it is incredibly destructive. It is not something that you want to mess with. So there are options for you. You have time to be able to do it. And make sure that you are safe in your family. And oh, by the way, the pets too. All counties and shelters, they have at least one pet-friendly shelter. We've actually evacuated some of the pet shelters where you've had abandoned pets. We've moved them to safer shelters in other parts of the state. So there's contingencies for all this stuff. We're going to have damage. People are going to lose homes. We're going to have businesses. We're going to have destruction of infrastructure. But we can fix all that. You guys can't fix if you decide to stay in 10 feet of storm surge and you die.
You've mastered the process there. Everybody gives you credit for it because, you guys do such a great job with handling this. But we're learning that FEMA now is reporting that there's a severe shortage of disaster workers. This is also coming with, they're saying they're going to need more money. They may run out of money in November. So what are your thoughts on that? And Are you guys set in Florida to be able to cover your people, even if FEMA won't have the money?
Well, we have what we need right now. And so FEMA, we work with them, some of the urban search and rescue, a lot of those people are in Florida anyways, but we're also bringing them in from around the country. We're also working with DOD to supplement the fuel mission. So we have all our requests have been honored pre-storm, and we anticipate after the storm. I don't know what Congress is going to have to do going forward, but I will want, because Steve also raised a good point about the fuel. So the fuel situation is in Florida. It's not a supply issue, it's a distribution issue because the stations are running through it faster than they normally do. We have Florida Highway Patrol escorting these fuel trucks into the gas stations. We have 1.5 million gallons that are either in Florida or en route in reserve. Our port of Tampa is still open. It's still going to be receiving fuel. So I think it's more of just when they run out, you got to replenish it. But we have stocked spare fuel in the state of Florida, and we'll continue to do that leading up to the storm. And we anticipate you could have some major interruptions at the port of Tampa, which is one of the places where we get a lot of our fuel from. And so we will work around that as needed.
Governor, I know Kamala Harris called you selfish. She said she's tried to contact you to talk to you about hurricane relief. And I know that you've said, I think you said she didn't try to contact you. We want to get your response. But first, listen to what she said. Well, we don't have the sound, but she said, you know, moment of crisis, if nothing else, should really be the moment that anyone calls himself a leader, says they're going to put politics aside and put the people first. People are in desperate need of support right now and playing political games at this moment in these crisis situations. These are the height of emergency situations. It's just utterly irresponsible and it's selfish. And it's about political gamemanship. What's your response?
Well, I think she should look in the mirror. We've been on an emergency footing for 2 weeks straight, round the clock, 24/7. We've been working, my office, our Division of Emergency Management, helping people prepare for Hurricane Helene, helping effectuate rescues of people after Hurricane Helene, helping people pick up the pieces of their lives after Helene, and then have to also turn around and prepare for major impacts and maybe even more impacts from Hurricane Milton, be able to have rescue personnel ready to help people, and then, of course, help with the power restoration, all these things to do. So that's been my sole focus. My focus has not been on dealing with Kamala Harris. I saw the news report. I didn't know she tried to contact me. But I'd also say it's not about you, Kamala. Right. It's about the people of Florida. My focus is exactly where it should be. And I can tell you this. I've worked on these hurricanes under both President Trump and President Biden. Neither of them ever tried to politicize it. She has never called on any of the storms we've had since she's been vice president until apparently now. Why all of a sudden is she trying to parachute in and inject herself when she's never shown any interest in the past? We know it's because of politics. We know it's because of her campaign. I have zero time to entertain these political games. We're going to continue to do what we need to do to prepare and respond to what may be one of the most damaging storms in the history of the United States. So she says focusing on protecting your people is selfish. I think she ought to look in the mirror.
And right now, Governor, just to conclude, you have what you need from the federal government as well as you feel like you have the resources in place. Is that correct?
Every request we've made, and I've been in contact with the president. I've been in contact with the FEMA director. You know, it's interesting. Harris is not even in the chain of command.
Yeah, what is she even doing?
She has no role in this. I mean, the idea that I should be like worrying about her when I'm focused on the task at hand is just quite frankly absurd. So yes, all of our requests have been answered. We have marshaled all state resources that are available to us. It's going to be a very robust response, but it's going to be a lot of damage, and we're bracing for that. I'd ask everyone to keep.
Yo, he's cooking. DeSantis is cooking. Shout out to DeSantis, man, and everybody living in Florida. I hope you're safe And I hope you have everything that you need. God bless you. Stay strong. God is your strength. All right, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Let's listen to Melania Trump. It's coming out now. She's talking. I guess some people say it's because of the new book. Um, However, I feel like she's just trying to protect her husband. She's trying to protect her husband, and this is what a wife would do. Just come out and talk about the things her husband has been going through and herself, and just talking about the family.
When I went to
From conquering the world of high fashion to meeting the man who would change the course of her life, Melania Trump offering a rare glimpse as First Lady and much more. It's all in her brand new self-titled memoir called Melania, which you can get a copy of at melaniatrump.com. And Melania Trump joins us now to talk about it. I read this entire thing cover to cover last night, and you tell the people about riding in the limousine with Michelle Obama on Inauguration Day. You talk about some of your battles with the press. What was something you put in this book that you've been wanting to get off your chest for all of these years that people really need to see?
well, everything.
Everything.
Everything. I think it's a lot of misinformation out there about me. So that's why I said that I think it's the time that people hear from me and my story, my perspective, and the truth.
We're about the truth on this show. Judge Jeanine, do you have a question? You've been very excited about this interview today.
I have so many questions, but I'll start with one that is clearly serious. The former president has survived 2 assassination attempts. And Kamala's camp has just issued yesterday that they're going to go more negative. The Biden-Harris team continues with the negative rhetoric, whether it's Hitler or, he's tearing down democracy. Are you worried about your husband's safety in the next 29 days?
Of course I do. Yes, I do. I think, when they call him, he's a threat to democracy, let's ask ourselves, who is really a threat to democracy? They are ongoing with the lawfare against the former president, as well as, trying to get him off the voting ballots and trying to, silence him. So, yes, of course, I was always afraid what can happen, and that they continuing with that kind of language is just, it's a toxic atmosphere.
Jessica Tarlov, Harold Ford Jr., do you have a question for the former First Lady?
I do. First of all, great to see you, and we're so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
When you think about some of the positive things that you experienced in the White House when you and President Trump were there, what were some of the things that made you most joyful about policy and the things that he did?
Well, he did a lot, and he took care of the military, and I really loved visiting them, actually all around the world, even when I went to in Iraq for Christmas, when I went to Walter Reed and visiting the soldiers, wounded soldiers, and also when I visited the aircraft on the middle of the ocean. So very exciting, and all the people that I met over 4 years, really, really special, and they always, they stay with you. Sometimes you still remember them. So it's always something that I'm looking forward to it.
When Dana went to Iraq, she had a black eye. I'm very glad that didn't happen to you.
I'm the only one who got hurt in that whole thing. That's true, but I recovered. In the book, you do talk about the power of the office of the First Lady to do good. And I think from afar, what I witnessed was that you seemed very joyful when you were, certainly around the military, but also when you were around children. And I remember early on, you went and you read to children, and it was a special moment. And I'm wondering if former President Trump wins again. I know that foster care is an issue that you care about, and it's a system that is broken. And there's a lot of organizations that help, like Selfless Love out of Florida and Texas. They're amazing. But a push from the White House could really help. Is there an issue like that or anything else that you kind of wish that you had another chance to work on?
Well, I will bring my experiences back, what I learned in the 4 years. And as well, I will continue my Be Best initiative.
You're right.
For children, for women, and also I will continue with Fostering the Future, the initiative that I established after I left the White House in 2021. And I have 2 platforms, MelaniaTrump.com and USMemorabilia.com, that support scholarships for fostering children and fostering community. I have many students now in. So I will continue with that. And we need to give back to those children and support them. So once they have education, they could have a great job. And after that, they could give back to communities.
Greg Gutfeld.
Oh, I love the cover.
Because it's black.
It's black. Like you, I was a model. And do you ever... there's some magazines you probably never heard of, but they're out of business now.
Yeah.
Do you ever stop and think about your life and wonder, how did you get here? Like, you came to the United States in '96. You arrived at JFK. And then you end up in the White House. And... obviously you didn't expect it, but does it ever kind of have these moments where, how did I get here?
Yeah, it's an incredible journey, incredible story, where I came from small town in Slovenia and then went to Milan, Paris, New York. And, you never know what can happen in life, right? We don't know the future. We don't know what will happen next year. So, here we are.
Would you have married Donald Trump if you had a crystal ball that said he would be president?
That's a interesting question.
By the way, does he ever...
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Double tap your screen. Subscribe to the channel. This is why I am supporting the 45th. Some people say he might be the 47th. I don't know. What do you think? This is why I support him. The OG, the legendary former President Donald J. Trump. His wife is not even from the United States. She wasn't born here, just like me, just like Elon Musk. Okay, so when people say, well, he doesn't like immigrant, no, he doesn't like keyword illegal immigrant. He likes it if you come here legally. I know it's it's not, I guess, fair to say, but because people are going through a lot of wild things that most Americans can't even fathom or think about or comprehend, because it's wild out there. That's why I always say United States is the greatest country in the world. I love the United States. I am grateful to America. I love this beautiful country. I call it a land of milk and honey. And I love the people of the United States. And that's why I do what I do. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Let's get it.
Sleep? He doesn't sleep much. He does, of course.
Does he wear pajamas?
No.
No. What does he wear when he sleeps, Melania?
Well, one of the things she does get into in the book, Greg, since I've read it and you haven't, obviously, the first date.
Yes.
And how he courted you, and that courtship was very special. These are just many of the things you reveal in the book. One of those moments when Greg alluded to it, where am I? How am I here? You were in the Situation Room during the al-Baghdadi raid.
Yeah.
That must have been pretty intense.
it was amazing to experience that kind of action, really, and soldiers, they were so brave and interesting. I didn't put in the book, actually, but it's after that, in few months, I met those pilots in North Carolina that they flew over. So they explained to me what they need to do, how they need to prepare. They cannot tell anybody. They go and they're called to duty, and right away they go on the flight and they tell them where they need to go. So very interesting story, yes. But I was there, and my husband, he called me and he said, like, he wants that I see it, and it was incredible what they did.
Did you get to meet the dog too?
I did.
Conan,
Yes. And you were there too. Yes.
You met Conan too.
Yes, it's on the back of one of my books.
And you were so brave. You went right there to him, and
pulled up.
she was it's amazing. You were so brave with him.
Yeah, I think the dog was scared of Janine.
Yeah, probably. Actually, it was Laura and I. We kept calling the president and said, "Please, can you bring Conan in?" But yeah, it was fun. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Or okay, there are a lot of women who are on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, a few. What would you say to them regarding why Donald Trump should be president?
Well, we could see in the 4 years that he was there, country was in great shape. Country was safe. Country was prosperous, and he will bring that back.
Yes.
When you are hopefully First Lady again,
yes,
will you continue with the Be Best initiative? I know that was near and dear to your heart in those 4 years.
I will do that. And also, we need to see what will happen in few months and what next year will bring, and new issues will come, right? So you need to tackle those issues, and you need to...
Well, and one of them is that what we have seen, there's an increase in crime against women. And that's been happening in all of the stories that we talk about when you have an illegal migrant crime. It's not just women, but there is a particular attack against women that's happening. And I'm not necessarily asking, that just came to me. I didn't plan on asking you about that. But it does seem to me like you don't know what the issues are going to be. North Carolina has to be rebuilt. Tennessee has to be rebuilt. There's so many things that
now Florida is coming, right?
Yes.
The big hurricane in Florida. I'm glad that many people, they move.
Leaving.
They're leaving. They move away, so they will be safe.
Quick light question. How's Barron doing at NYU?
He's doing great. He loves his classes and his professors. He's doing well. He's thriving, and he's enjoying to be in New York City again.
Melania, is there something you would want people to know about your husband that they probably don't know that they should know? Something that they would be, that's pretty good.
Well, I have some stories, and Jesse, you read it in the book. So they're kind of, cute, nice stories. And he's very warm. He's fun. He has a great personality. And all he wants, he's very passionate about this country. All he wants to make this country safe. So everybody has jobs and enjoying family life. And, he's treating everybody equal. He doesn't, man or woman. He could be tough on a woman. He could be tough on a man. We experienced that.
We've seen that. We've seen that.
Does he make you laugh?
Yeah. Yes, he does, of course. Yes. Yeah.
That's the key.
He is.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Melania, and congratulations. Good luck with the book.
One thing I gotta say is she's a beautiful woman, and Trump got this right. If y'all say anything about Trump, he got this one right. That's all I'ma say. That's all I'ma say.
No wonder they kept her tucked away. Kamala's media blitz kicked off with a total faceplant. The Veep struggling to answer some of the most basic questions on 60 Minutes.
Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policies as much as you did?
It's a long-standing problem, and solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
What I was asking was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place?
I think the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay?
But the numbers did quadruple.
After that disaster, Kamala sprinting to the gals on The View for a pep talk. But even they couldn't stop Harris from turning into a walking GOP ad.
We have more with Vice President. When we come, we're honored and proud to have you at this table.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. I think people are exhausted. And they're exhausted with the lies. They're exhausted with the selfishness.
And the cheerleading tour didn't end there. Harris then hopped on over to Howard Stern's studio for a sit-down that sounded more like a therapy session. Watch.
If he wins, God forbid, would you feel safe in this country? Would you stay in this country?
Howard, I'm doing everything I can to make sure he does not win.
I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
You know, Dana, I'll start with you off of that last sound. You know, the amazing thing is Rachel Maddow said if Trump gets elected, she won't have a show. And now Kamala is making herself, she's turning into a victim. I mean, do they think that this is going to cause people to vote for her as opposed to Trump?
Well, ever since I can remember, and I remember like when President Bush won, they said that they were going to leave the country, and no one ever leaves because it's the best country. So we obviously know that's not true. Howard Stern says something interesting there that I've been hearing from other people on the right and the left saying that how could it possibly be that anybody would ever vote for that person? Well, that if you're thinking that and you want your candidate to win, you better just sit down because you are not being helpful right now. The vote is going to be very, very close. So everybody needs to understand that there are people who want to vote for her, there are people that want to vote for him, and the turnout is going to matter, and that is a big prophetic statement, isn't it? You said something that I think is interesting. She creates new ad content for her opponents every time she does TV. That happened in 2020. It got her in the penalty box at the White House. Remember, she'd do an interview, then she'd basically not be seen for 4 or 5 months, and she'd come out and she'd do it again. And I'm listening to Bill Whitaker, who I thought did a really nice job. And I just wonder, how can you work in a White House for so long and absorb so little? She couldn't answer just basic questions. And I'm going to put this on par with Katie Couric's interview with Sarah Palin. Republicans didn't want to admit it at the time, but they kind of knew in their gut, like, that wasn't good. This was not good for her. If you were tuning in for the first time, you know nothing about Kamala Harris, you left the interview still knowing nothing about Kamala Harris. If you know a little bit and you wanted to know a little bit more, then you were left even more sorely disappointed. And maybe you don't like President Trump, but you know who he is and what he has done. He's got a record. She doesn't, and she doesn't even act like she's been at the White House for the last 3.5 years.
You know, Jesse, the truth is that David Whitaker, I mean, he did a great job. He pressed her 3 times on getting her to answer the question that whether it was a mistake changing the Trump-era policies that quadrupled the number of illegals coming into the country. She wouldn't answer the question. So here is a serious interview with a serious interviewer. She still doesn't answer the question.
Whitaker did a job, which is his job. He didn't do a great job. He just asked her all of the questions she should have been asked for months. This isn't hard stuff. Why'd prices go up? Why didn't you do anything about it? Why'd you do nothing on the border? She was struggling to answer why she's running for president, Judge. She was struggling to answer why she's even the nominee. She has all these plans to fix the problems that she hasn't fixed in 4 years. Okay, that's fine. She's not the president. She's the vice president. And then she goes on The View and says, I agree with everything the president's done. Judge Janine, a week ago at the debate, she said, I'm not Joe Biden. Now she says, I am Joe Biden. She flip-flopped on whether she's Joe Biden. And now she comes out and says this and that. You know, I haven't changed my positions. I'm just seeking common ground. She's not seeking common ground. She's seeking common sense. All of the positions that she's now adopted are common sense conservative positions on guns, on taxes, on immigration. She's just now come along late to the game. I'd rather vote for the guy that had common sense from the beginning than the woman who found common sense right before the election. It was very smart that Donald Trump didn't do 60 Minutes. If he had done 60 Minutes, everybody would have just contrasted his interview with hers, and his would have been explosive and confrontational. Now everybody's just talking about her failure on CBS News, and that's a position she does not want to be in.
You know, Harold, she was questioned and pressed on all of her changing positions, whether it's fracking, immigration, Medicare for all. And she said, people know me. They know who I am. Walz said the same thing. People know me. They know who I am. Does anyone know who either of them are?
I don't know. I'm glad to be back with you. I think that the 60-minute interview, Jesse, I wish the president had done, former President Trump had done, I think would probably have served him well from the standpoint of people understanding, again, what he wants to do the next 4 years, and it would allow for the contrast you mentioned. The reason I think presidents and candidates for president should always have to do 3 debates, and maybe we should divide it. They should do one on national security, one on economic security, inflation, and one in general, where they talk about their attitudes toward regulation, the courts, et cetera. Is because it gives voters a sense of what the mandate might be, what they want to do, how they will go about working with Congress, how they will go about explaining things to the public. And unfortunately, we've not been afforded that. I agree with you, Dan. I'm not going anywhere. I'm an American. No one's going to take my country from me because they decide to elect someone I don't like. And people who are that shallow are indeed that shallow. We work for the next election if that's what you want, and you work with the person to try to make things better. Finally, what I don't understand with the vice president in these interviews, you have to, Judge, you're right, you have to use these opportunities to demonstrate not only that you understand where people are in their lives and how you're going to meet them and take them to higher ground, but talk about your ideas. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you talked about, and some people don't like when I say this, but to say that the tariffs are going to make things more expensive at stores in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Madison, Wisconsin, name stores. If you're out campaigning, you can talk about real people that you've met, real stores that you went in, how that's going to change the price of gas and food and clothes for kids and for adults. And if you want to say, I'm going to make small businesses, make it easier for them to grow, talk about your plans. But when you don't do that, you open yourself up for some of the, I think, legitimate criticism that's coming from this table here and legitimate concern that's coming from me.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have over 1,000 people watching the live stream. Double tap your screen, like the live stream, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching and you're enjoying the show, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. God bless you guys. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are still here listening. We're still here listening. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, excuse me. The president actually had something to say concerning the update on Helen and Milton. Let's listen to the President of the United States, President Joe Biden.
And who are driving up preparedness for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms in 100 years to hit Florida, and continued efforts on Hurricane Helene. I've directed this team to do everything it can to save lives in our communities, help our communities before, during, and after these extreme weather events, and that's being done. That's being done. I've spoken to all the political leaders in the region, some of them more than once, and I've told them anything they asked for.
First, we are just 28 days until an inflection point for our country. That is called Election Day. A political storm is brewing across the country as the hurricane is now bearing down on Florida. Kamala Harris she decided to pick a fight with Governor Ron DeSantis, who's busy trying to save the lives of Floridians and also pre-staging 30,000 utility trucks and trucks with water and food and medicine and supplies. And she's trashing him in public for not taking the time to speak with her on the phone, a call that he never received. Last night on this program, Governor Ron DeSantis responded. Take a look.
For Kamala Harris to try to say that my sole focus on the people of Florida is somehow selfish is delusional. She has no role in this. In fact, she's been vice president for 3.5 years. I've dealt with a number of storms under this administration. She has never contributed anything.
And who are driving up preparedness for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms in 100 years. And who are driving up preparedness for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms in 100 years that hit Florida. And continued efforts on Hurricane Helene. I've directed this team to do everything it can to save lives in our communities, help our communities before, during, and after these extreme weather events, and that's being done. That's being done. I've spoken to all the political leaders in the region, some of them more than once, and I've told them anything they ask for, they can get. We've given, and we've got an overwhelming response, positive response from everyone from the governors of Florida up to North Carolina. And mayors, leaders, local have expressed their sincere gratitude for the work of FEMA and for the work of my entire administration. Now, I've also surged thousands of federal personnel on the ground across the southeast already and deliver every available resource as fast as possible. And my priority is to increase the size and presence of our effort. And as we prepare for another catastrophic storm about to make landfall, you know, I've been in constant contact with our director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham, who's kept me informed the last several days of what to anticipate. You never know until it happens, but he's very, very engaged. He made clear to me just how dangerous this storm is, indicating that winds had reached up to 180 miles an hour. 180, that's not guaranteed it's going to hit the shore at 180 miles, but they've reached up to 180 miles an hour. And a possible storm surge as it hits the coast of Florida of 15 feet, which can be devastating. The current path of the storm is expected to Tampa Bay area and cut directly across the state, east to west, all the way across the state, with the potential for this storm to both enter Florida as a hurricane and leave Florida as a hurricane on the Atlantic coast. This could be the worst storm to hit Florida in over a century. And God willing, it won't be, but that's what it's looking like right now. Immediately approved the pre-landfall emergency declarations in Florida. This is the second one in a week, the second time in a week, and there have been two before that, by the way. I sent FEMA Administrator Criswell down to Florida yesterday to work intensively with the state and local partners as we prepare to deploy more resources. She's going to continue that work between Florida and North Carolina in the coming days. I'm calling on the airlines and other companies to provide much service as possible to accommodate evacuations and not to engage in price gouging, to just do it on the level. And last night I spoke again with the governor of Florida, DeSantis, and Tampa Mayor Castro, Castor, and I made it clear to them they should reach out, including to me directly, with everything else they may need as they see this storm hits. I gave them my personal number to contact me here in the White House. Most importantly, I've urged everyone currently located in Hurricane Milton's path to listen to local officials and follow safety instructions. You all have been reporting on the highways, the shoulders being opened, everybody's heading out. And if you're under evacuation orders, you should evacuate now. You should have already evacuated. It's a matter of life and death, and that's not hyperbole. It's a matter of life and death. So let me add that FEMA has provided 300 ambulances to move people who can't move themselves out of healthcare facilities. And while we prepare for Hurricane Milton, we're still surging resources in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee to respond to Hurricane Helena. And it's real. The impact is still there. And we're going to leave, we're not going to leave until the job is done. It's going to take time. And before it's all over, it's going to take tens of billions of dollars to get it done. And Kamala and I are keeping all of you in our prayers out there. There's a lot of people. The good news is, just before we called you in, I received information that the number of missing persons has been significantly reduced, lost from the first hurricane. But we'll have more information on that later. So that's the situation, and we're not going to leave till the job is finished. It's going to take a while.
Sir, what's the risk of political figures sharing misinformation during this time?
The past is prologue is real. But the fact of the matter is, I think we have, I've been able to contact all the governors. They are sticking up for what they've asked for. They're pointing out that they're satisfied with everything they're getting. But I can't speak for others on the internet. And I mean, just, look, those who do it to try to damage the administration. Well, we can take care of ourselves. But it misleads people. It puts people in circumstances where they panic, where they really worry. They think now they're not being taken care of. And it really is, it's going to sound, use an old phrase, it's un-American. It really is. People are scared to death. People know their lives are at stake. All that they've worked for, all that they own, all that they value. And it's just, anyway.
Mr. President, can you give us a sense of how Vice President,
Thank you, guys.
can you give us a sense of Vice President Harris's role in this?
Wait. I'll have plenty of time to talk about Angola. I still plan on going to Africa. I'll have plenty of time to talk about what's going on in Latin America and South America in terms of the Amazon. And I'm going to be talking today with my friend, the Chancellor of Germany, and we're going to try to work that out. We've already contacted all these people, okay? But I'm going to be on the phone today. I'm heading shortly when I get up from here. I'm heading out to Wisconsin, to Milwaukee. But I think we can, I'm still planning on visiting all the places I said I'd be and all the conferences I said I'd participate in.
Mr. President, as far as everything you'd like to do.
The governor of Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call. So I don't know. There was a rough start in some places, but every governor from Florida to North Carolina has been fully cooperative and supportive and acknowledged what this team is doing. And they're doing an incredible job. But we got a lot more to do. So.
And thank you for your time. Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Over. Thank you, guys. Thank you, press. Thank you, folks. Thank you, press. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, press.
Yeah, they're taking him out of there real fast. Taking him out of there real quick. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. You guys are the best. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. We have come to the end of the live show. Remember, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of whatever's going on in your life right now, never ever give up. Never give up. God is with you. I know these times are hard. I know it is currently really hard. Some people are just going through a lot of, you know, down times. A lot of people are struggling. Some people don't even know when the next, money's coming in for their bills. Just don't give up, man. Do not give up. Do not give up. Do not give up. Right. No matter what you're going through, stay hopeful, stay strong, and anything can happen, bro. Anything can happen, sister. Stay strong. I am rooting for you. Genesis is praying for you. God is going to open new doors for you. Okay, I got one last one for you. Let's go see what the polls are doing on CNN, all right?
So there is a brand new poll from the New York Times, a national poll, which shows Kamala Harris with a 4-point lead over Donald Trump. But here's the thing. Thanks to the founding fathers, it's not a national election. It's a collection of state elections. CNN senior data reporter Harry Yenton is with us this morning. That's why these swing states are so important, not the national polling. What is the latest on where the swing states stand?
Yeah, I don't really give a hoot about the national polling. It could tell us about trends, but not much more. Look, these are the battleground states, right? These are the 7 we've been looking at. We got 4 weeks to go until the election. Look, the Great Lake battleground states, as close as they've been. Harris by a point in Pennsylvania, 2 in Michigan, 2 in Wisconsin. Way too close to call. You come over to the right side of the screen with me. Sunbelt battleground states. You see more red on this side of the screen than blue. We do see Harris up by a point in Nevada. Again, way too close to call. Trump by a point in North Carolina, Georgia, 2 in Arizona. This has been the consistent story since Kamala Harris got into the race, right? That is that she has done better in those Great Lake battleground states. She has closed the gap in the Sunbelt battleground states, but still friendlier terrain for Trump than those Great Lake battleground states.
How confident should anyone on earth feel that these numbers would actually stick?
Okay, so I consistently say this race is too close to call. So I decided to go back through history, okay? And this to me says everything. How much do the state poll averages miss by, all right? The average error since 1972 in the close races in those battleground states we've been looking at, 3.4 points. 3.4 points. Every single state, all 7 of those key battleground states are within 3.4 points. What's the chance for an even larger error? You know, we talk about the margin of error, right? So what is that 95% confidence interval? What is that true margin of error? 5% of errors in state polling averages are off by more than 9.4 points. These battleground states are well within that. I want you to remember this number because the bottom line is this race is going to be too close to call almost certainly all the way to Election Day. It's definitely going to be within this interval, and it's most likely going to be within this interval. So the bottom line is the state polling averages tell us what it tells us is it's just a race that is too close to call. Maybe one candidate has a slight advantage over the other one, but the bottom line is it is way too close to call, and it will remain so.
Superimpose all of this really important information that you just gave us on the electoral map.
Yeah, okay. So let's say the polls are exactly right. If the polls are exactly right, Kamala Harris gets 276 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 262 because she carries those Great Lake battleground states despite losing North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. But let's say we have a polling miss like we had in 2020. What happens then? Well, then Donald Trump wins the election in a blowout with 312 electoral votes because he carries all these Great Lake battleground states, plus Nevada, plus the other states he was leading in, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. But 2020 is just one election. What happens if we have a polling miss like 2022? Well, in that particular case, now the winner has flipped again. And Kamala Harris wins in a blowout with 319 electoral votes because she retakes those Great Lake battleground states, carries North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. So the bottom line here is, yes, we have those state polling averages, but the real thing they tell us is that this race is too close to call. We're probably not going to know who's going to win for another month and perhaps another month and change.
It's the Full Employment Act for senior data reporters.
You know what? I will take it. Any employment is good employment, my friend.
Thank you very much. Kate?
All right, joining us right now is the senior spokesperson for the Kamala Harris campaign, Ian Sams. Ian, thank you so much. Let's leave it as this race is still too close to call from what we just heard from my colleagues. I want to talk to you about some of the issues and some of the questions and answers that the vice president is taking and answering in these slew of new interviews that she's doing. In the 60 Minutes interview, the vice president was asked about Ukraine, asked specifically if she would support Ukraine's bid to join NATO. Let me play this for you.
As president, would you support the effort to expand NATO to include Ukraine?
Those are all issues that we will deal with if and when it arrives at that point. Right now, we are supporting Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia's unprovoked aggression.
She did not answer the question about Ukraine's NATO membership. Does the vice president support Ukraine's push to join NATO eventually?
Well, look, Kate, and thanks for having me this morning. I think that what the vice president was saying last night is true, which is right now, in this very moment, the most important thing that the United States and the international community can be doing is supporting Ukraine against this invasion from Putin and his war of aggression that has been brutal and slaughtered so many people in Ukraine. And she is committed to doing that. I think that what she was saying last night is that, like, there will be a time and place for discussions like that. Right now, the most important thing is that the international community rally around Ukraine. CNN just this morning has new reporting on Bob Woodward's book that is coming out that reveals that President Trump, since he left office as a private citizen, has, according to Trump's own aides, had at least 7 one-on-one calls with Vladimir Putin. I don't know what those are about. I don't know if the Trump campaign or President Trump have explained what those are about, but what the vice president said last night rings even truer. Donald Trump's plan with Ukraine and Russia would be for Ukraine to surrender and to let Vladimir Putin take territory that he is trying to steal. That is dangerous.
They very clearly have a different position on how they approach Russia, Ian. There's no question about that. But the former Secretary General of NATO, he has even said that it's a question of when, not if, Ukraine will join the NATO alliance. Does Kamala Harris agree with that?
Well, I'm going to reiterate what the vice president said, which is that there'll be a time for that conversation. Right now, the conversation should be focused on how do we make sure Ukraine has the resources it needs to repel Putin and Russia. It is something that she has led the international community on, meeting with President Zelensky numerous times and rallying our allies. Donald Trump is saying cede territory to Russia. That should scare every American who is thinking about him returning to the Oval Office. But I just want to make this point. When Donald Trump says that we should give territory from Ukraine to Putin, think about what that means. That means that the potential president of the United States is signaling to the world that if you're a dictator like Vladimir Putin and you want to take another country next door, go right ahead. That is not the kind of strength that America needs on the world stage. And it's why the vice president has been so strong in standing up for Ukraine and for the United States in this moment.
Problem here is they never answer any questions. When they'll say, I'm just trying to say, can you answer the question? No, they ain't going to answer the question. Man, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. These people never answer questions.
When's the right time, if there's a time and place for it, when is the right time for the vice president to make her position known on if Ukraine if she would support Ukraine's joining NATO?
Well, Kate, I think that for people who want to know the position of these two candidates, again, on this campaign for 1 month more before the election on Ukraine and Russia, I think it's a pretty clear distinction of who has Ukraine's back, who is making sure that Putin and his dictatorial reign is repelled when he tries to invade neighboring countries, and that we just cannot afford the risk that Trump would put the United States in by letting dictators like Putin do that.
They very clearly have different positions on Russia and support for Ukraine. There's no question of that. I'm just trying to nail that down a little bit more. Let's move on. Florida is staring down another hurricane. This will be the second major hurricane to hit the state in less than 2 weeks. A White House official has now told CNN that Vice President Harris reached out to Ron DeSantis, the governor, multiple times since Hurricane Helene, and that the Florida governor did not take any of her calls. Responding to the reports of him not taking her calls, she called it political gamesmanship, irresponsible and selfish, which then led to Ron DeSantis. We don't have the soundbite? We don't have the soundbite, which then led to Ron DeSantis saying that she has no place to be involved in any of these talks with regard to Hurricane Helene recovery, that he has been in touch with Joe Biden, and she's basically trying to get her, she's playing political games by trying to insert herself. What do you say to that?
What I would say to that right now is, I think you're right. We saw yesterday that the governor spoke to the president. The vice president has tried to speak to the governor and would look forward to speaking to the governor, because a moment like this is about putting politics aside and making sure that states who were impacted by the devastation, whether it was Hurricane Helene or preparing for Hurricane Milton to come, which does seem very concerning. And the vice president said yesterday she's been briefed on this from FEMA and is encouraging residents in Florida to listen to their local officials, including Governor DeSantis, about what to do on the ground there as this storm threatens. And I think that what she was speaking to more broadly, which I think is very, very important, is in a moment like this, when you have a choice in a presidential election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who is actually putting the country first when it comes to preparing for a natural disaster? We know right now, Donald Trump's own former aides said that when he was president of the United States, he would hold up relief to places that he didn't think voted for him. He politicized getting people the help they need in a moment of pain and crisis. Vice President Harris absolutely will never do that. She wants to make sure that people in Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, the states who have been so impacted by Helene, the states who may be devastated by this hurricane that's barreling toward Florida, that they get the help they need and that they have the resources that they need, which is why she and the president have mobilized thousands of federal personnel, 1,000 active duty military, sent millions of liters of water and meals to states who have been impacted by Helene. That's the kind of leadership you need in a moment like this, not Donald Trump, who's lying about disaster relief not getting to places, who's trying to divide Americans who are facing some of their biggest tragedies of their lives. That is what we don't need from a president and a leader in a moment like this.
These storms and their impact should definitely be above politics, that is for sure. Ian Sams, thank you very much for coming on.
But right now, breaking explosive new reporting about the secret relationship Trump has been carrying on with Vladimir Putin. One that we now know tonight includes as many as 7 private phone calls since Trump left office. Another revelation tonight is a bit bizarre, and that is that Trump sent Putin individual COVID tests at the height of COVID. Now, according to legendary journalist Bob Woodward's new book, those tests were sent to Putin during the height of the pandemic in 2020, right? When gosh, nobody could get a hold of tests. Now, during a call at the time, Putin tells Trump, quote, "Please don't tell anybody you sent these to me." And Trump replies, and Woodward's the one putting quotes around this, "I don't care, fine." Putin says, no, I don't want you to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. They don't care about me. Now, Trump sending Putin personal COVID tests is at the least fascinating. I mean, how did they get to Putin? Who knew about them? Did Trump send them to other world leaders, or was this just special for Putin? And then did Putin really use COVID tests sent from America, putting his DNA on them? I mean, what was this about? Well, today, Vice President Kamala Harris had this to say about it.
In the height of the pandemic, and remember, and your listeners will remember, people were dying by the hundreds.
Yeah.
Everybody was scrambling to get these kits, the tests, the COVID test kits.
You couldn't get them.
Couldn't get them.
Right.
Couldn't get them anywhere.
Right.
And this guy who is president of the United States is sending them to Russia, to a murderous dictator for his personal use? You're getting played. And some would say, look, I grew up in the neighborhood. Some would say you're getting punked.
Yeah.
If you stand in favor of somebody who's an adversary over your friends on principles that we all agree on.
Now, the Trump campaign responding to these claims in an angry fashion. Let me just read part of the statement. "None of these made-up stories by Bob Woodward are true and are the work of a truly demented and deranged man who suffers from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome." Woodward is an angry little man and is clearly upset because President Trump is successfully suing him because of the unauthorized publishing of recordings he made previously. There's just a little taste of the statement. Now, CNN presidential historian Tim Naftali, who, of course, has been the head of the Nixon Library, tells out front that former presidents talking to adversaries, actually, that may not be new in concept. But there is no record from Woodward's reporting that a really crucial thing happened, which is that a single person in the intelligence or national security communities knew about Trump and Putin's calls. In fact, the New York Times reporting tonight, of the 19 officials that they spoke to, not one was told about these calls. So that's crucial, and context always matters here. Trump's desire to be close to Putin is important, his admiration for him is important, and his clear support of Putin's view on Ukraine, as just one example, opens the door to something deeply serious. A former president talking with a sitting world leader in secret, contradicting U.S. government policy. So let's just take Ukraine. And what Trump has said publicly tells us a lot.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions.
Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal.
Negotiate a deal. That's exactly what Putin says he wants.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We're willing to negotiate.
I mean, that's the policy of Putin, echoed by Trump. A deal where he gets Ukrainian land, and eventually, of course, much, if not all, of the largest country in Europe. But Trump's support of Putin on this existential issue for the Russian dictator is noticed in Russia, where state media portrays Donald Trump as a Vladimir Putin acolyte.
Trump is planning to.
Bro, how are we back here? If anybody even say, oh, really? Then you weren't around in 2016. Because it was the same situation in 2016. Remember when they said, well, if Trump wins in 2016, it's going to be fire. Remember that? This man can have the codes. This man cannot have the codes. That's what Hillary said. And guess what? We had a peaceful world. So we're back there. Every time it's the same story. It's the same story every single time. Now we're back here. If anybody even, man, y'all need to be, if y'all even think for 1 second this, well, it is what it is. This is why we're listening, so we can get both perspective.
To end the war in 24 hours. This scheme suits us well.
This scheme suits us well. She says it. It sure does. And it also does not come out of the blue. For years, Trump, of course, has had glowing things to say about Putin.
I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. I knew Putin very well. Got along with him actually great. Putin is a nicer person than I am. So now I like Putin. Now, Putin called me a genius, by the way.
Of course, the genius in this relationship may be Putin, who has maintained a direct relationship with a former president against U.S. protocol. All right, everyone's with me here. Let me start with Jeremy Herb. You have read this book, so you know all the detail in it, all the new reporting from the legendary Bob Woodward here. What more does he say about Trump's relationship with Putin?
You know what's fascinating when you pour through the book and read it is just how much Bob Woodward really brings you inside the room of these conversations that Donald Trump's had with Putin, also President Biden has had. He says that this is based on interviews with firsthand participants, people who were in the room listening, and documents. So that's what he is basing it on. When you have this transcript that is effectively
Well,
this
he put
call.
quotes around it.
He put quotes around it. And he doesn't put quotes around everything, but he put quotes around this where Putin tells Trump, please don't tell anyone you sent these to me. And then when you get to the calls, he says that an aide told him there may be as many as 7 calls. But he also has a scene there where the aide is sent out of the room. He says Trump sent this aide out of the rooms and told the aide, I'm having a private call with Putin. And so it gets you just a little bit more of a glimpse. Obviously, as you just laid out, there's a ton of context around Trump's relationship with Putin, but it gives us just that much more of a sense of really what he is thinking as he has these conversations.
Right, private conversations, having everyone leave the room. Again, we don't know what was said, but it's highly unusual. Let's just put it that way to say at the very least, and then you put the context around it. And Lulu, so that the Trump campaign statement, I shared part of it. They say none of the stories are true. Then they say President Trump gave him, referring to Woodward, absolutely no access for this trash book that either belongs in the bargain bin of the fiction section of a discount bookstore or used as toilet tissue. Okay, sometimes when you get a response that aggressive, it's because, you hit something. You hit something that was fragile. So what's your reaction when you hear about all this?
I think it's really interesting that that's the way the Trump campaign responded. It says to me that they know how damaging this is. At the end of the day, Donald Trump has had this very long-standing relationship with Putin. The way that this is described, I have to tell you, not only is it highly unusual, it sounds almost romantic in nature. Don't tell them that I gave you this gift. Please, I want to protect you. It's a bizarre kind of relationship that they seem to have.
It's very odd.
It's very odd. It's not the relationship that you typically hear about between two world leaders. The other thing that really struck me is this is not Donald Trump talking to one of his golfing buddies. This is Donald Trump talking to the head of an adversarial power, a nuclear power that has invaded a sovereign country, that the sitting U.S. president has been absolutely pinpointing as one of the main threats to this country. This is about the policy of the United States. It might be fine for, Donald Trump to have a relationship with world leaders, but not a world leader who actually presents a threat to the interests of the United States.
Right. You're not talking about a Boris Johnson or something like that, Bill Kristol. I mean, how odd is this to you? I mean, would you say there's something wrong with a former president having as many as 7 calls with an adversary, right? Who's been talking about and threatening, lobbing nukes at U.S. allies or at the U.S. in the course of the Ukraine war? How do you even get your head around this?
No, I mean, that really is, the other stuff is bizarre, as president, sending Putin the COVID kit, but it doesn't seem to threaten U.S. interests. This is really appalling. I mean, presumably some of these conversations, maybe all of them happened after Putin invaded Ukraine, after we had sanctions against Russia. Trump is sitting there having private conversations with Putin, who we are doing our best to defeat in Ukraine. Who knows what they're saying? He kicks his aide out of the room. Is he giving Putin advice on how to deal with the Republican Party and how to make a good case for himself here in America? Is Putin giving him, Trump, advice? Is Putin giving Trump instructions? Is Putin promising Trump certain things? If Trump rallies the Republicans to be not pro-Ukraine and instead pro-Putin, Trump's sitting at Mar-a-Lago. There's no national security official on the phone, where there would be, presumably most of the time at least, if you're actually sitting in the White House and if you're president. There's no record of it at all. Trump's sitting with all these classified documents he took to Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. We really, I mean, the degree of not just irresponsibility, but possible really terrible behavior and damage to the interests of the United States here. It's really extraordinary.
Right. You point out, sitting there with all that, the classified information that he had with him at Mar-a-Lago that we now know. I mean, Jeremy, Woodward also, just the context here to remind everybody of the seriousness of the situation with Putin. But when I mentioned the nukes, that he is reporting that the U.S. government had assessed that there was a 50% chance that Putin could actually use a nuclear weapon regarding the Ukraine war. I mean, what more did you learn about that?
Yeah, obviously the quotes in this book are fascinating, but some of the really most interesting details I think Woodward has is just how much the White House was concerned that Putin actually might use nukes. Woodward reports on a call that happened before the war where he calls it a hot 50-minute call that Biden had with Putin, where at one point Putin mentioned using nuclear weapons in a threatening way, and Biden had to remind him, no one wins a nuclear war. And you fast forward about 6 months into the war in September of 2022, that's when this 50% intelligence assessment comes in. And the Biden White House went into overdrive to try to cut it off. They were concerned that they were going to make up a story about a dirty bomb. And we knew that publicly. But what the book shows us is what they did. They had Austin go to his counterpart. General Milley went to his counterpart. And Biden went to his other world leaders and tried to get them to walk Putin back off that ledge.
And now Trump may have, we don't know the dates, may have had a conversation. We don't know what he said. I mean, just puts the exclamation point on how crucial this is.
Well, the breaking news of the day.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th, some people say he might be the 47th. The former President Donald J. Trump has had 2 attempts, and it's sad. And the thing is, you don't even have to like him. But when you hear things like this about the former president, and they tell you, well, he's been talking to, you know, Putin and this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that. It's like, and now when they bring in America into it and the interest of America, it's like everybody has different perspectives, and you never know what people are capable of. You know, let's just let's just tone it down. I know it's the election time and everybody wants to say anything and stuff, but let's just tone it down. Okay, let's tone it down. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's tone it down, okay? Because nobody wins when situation goes wild. We've had gnats in our house for since the Hurricane Helen. They've been flying everywhere, bro. I don't like gnats, bro. The fuck, man. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. You know what time it is. God bless you. 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 Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Okay. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Believe in yourself. God bless you. God bless the United States. Take care of your family. Keyword, take care of your family. Never, ever give up on yourself. Genesis is signing out. Your boy Genesis is